Entry 1, March 18th, 2023. My name is Robert Keller. I'm 52 years old. This morning I signed divorce papers in a lawyer's office that smelled like old coffee and failure. 25 years of marriage reduced to signatures on dotted lines. Linda gets the house in Billings. The 3-bedroom ranch style with the deck I built in 1999. The kitchen I remodeled in 2015. The yard I mowed every Saturday for a quarter century. She gets all of it. I get a check for $44,000 and a handshake from a lawyer who's already forgotten my name. He asked what I'm going to do now, where I'm going to live, what my plan is. I told him I don't know. That was the truth. I sat there in his office with that check in my hand and I had no idea what comes next. For 25 years I knew what came next. Wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, watch television, go to bed, repeat. Every day the same, every year the same. Now I don't know what tomorrow looks like. Don't know where I'll sleep a month from now. Don't know who I am without the house and the wife and the routine that told me I was somebody. The lawyer said take some time, figure it out. Don't make any big decisions right away. I nodded like that was good advice. But sitting there I realized I've been making small decisions for 25 years and every one of them led here. To this office, to this check, to this ending. Maybe it's time for a big decision. Maybe it's time to do something that doesn't make sense to anybody but me. Entry 2, March 21st. I've been living at the Motel 6 on the edge of Billings for 3 days. Room 114, second floor. View of the parking lot and a Denny's across the street. $140 a night. The math is simple and it's bad. 44,000 minus 3 nights is already 43,580. At this rate I'm broke in 10 months. Less if I eat. Less if I do anything except sit in this room and watch the money disappear. I spent yesterday looking at apartments online. Every single one wants first month, last month, and deposit up front. The cheap ones want $3,000. The decent ones want $5,000. If I put down $5,000, I've got $39,000 left and a lease that locks me into Billings for a year. A city where I spent 25 years building someone else's construction projects. Where every street corner reminds me of what I lost. Where people know me as Linda's husband. Or Linda's ex-husband now. There has to be something else. Somewhere else. Some way to make $44,000 mean more than 10 months in a motel or a year in an apartment I can't afford. Entry 3, March 24th. I found something today. I don't know if it's smart or stupid, but I found it. I was scrolling through real estate listings at 2 in the morning because I can't sleep anymore. Saw an ad that caught my eye. Estate sale. 160 acres. Macomb County. House, barn, equipment included. Cash only. $32,000. No bidders in 6 months. I looked at the photos. The house is falling apart. Roof sagging in the middle like a broken back. Windows either broken or boarded up. Front porch listing to one side. The barn isn't much better. Old wooden structure leaning east like it's trying to walk away from the whole mess. But the land. 160 acres of eastern Montana grassland stretching out flat and empty under a sky that goes on forever. The listing said tillable land. Said previous owner farmed wheat. Said he died 6 years ago and the heirs just want it gone. I sat there in that motel room looking at those photos and something shifted inside me. I don't know anything about farming. Never planted a seed in my life, but I know how to work, know how to fix things, know how to take something broken and make it useful again. That's what I did for 25 years in construction. Took raw materials and built something real. Maybe I can do it again. Maybe I can take this broken down farm and build a life out of it. Or maybe I'll waste my settlement money and end up worse than I started. But sitting in this motel room spending $140 a day to watch my future disappear, that's not working either. Entry 4, March 27th. I drove out to see the place today. 4 hours northeast from Billings into country that gets emptier with every mile. The highway cuts through rolling grassland the color of old straw. No trees except along the creek bottoms. No buildings except a barn every few miles and a house that looks abandoned more often than not. This is land people leave. Land that doesn't forgive mistakes. Found the property on a gravel road 12 miles from the nearest town. Town being generous. Circle, Montana. Population 500 and something. One gas station. One grocery store. One bar. That's the whole downtown. The farm is 4 miles past that. Just a mailbox with a faded number and a driveway that's more potholes than gravel. I pulled in and sat in my truck for 5 minutes just looking. The house is worse in person. The roof has a hole I could put my fist through. The porch steps are rotted out. Someone nailed plywood over most of the windows, but a few are just empty frames with glass scattered in the dirt below. The barn is standing, but I don't know how. The whole structure leans like a drunk trying to find his balance. The doors hang crooked on broken hinges. But behind the barn there's a machine shed, aluminum walls, concrete floor, and inside that shed there's a tractor. International Harvester Farmall M painted red once upon a time, but now it's more rust than paint. The tires are flat. The seat is torn. Bird droppings cover the hood and the steering wheel. But it's there, sitting in the shadows like it's been waiting. The real estate agent met me there. Woman named Carol, maybe 60 years old, drove a pickup truck with a bumper sticker that said Montana or nothing. She unlocked the house and we walked through rooms that smelled like mice and mold. Water damage on the ceilings, holes in the floors, everything that could be stripped out already gone. No appliances, no fixtures, just empty rooms and broken windows. Carol said the previous owner was named Harlan Peterson, farmed this land for 40 years, had a heart attack out in the wheat field in 2017 and died before the ambulance could get there. His son inherited the place, but the son lived in Seattle and didn't want to be a farmer, put the property up for sale and moved on with his life. That was 6 years ago. The bank foreclosed 2 years back. Now they just want someone to take it off their hands. I asked about the tractor. Carol shrugged, said it came with the place, said it hasn't run in 8 years at least, probably longer, said it's junk and I'd probably have to pay to haul it away. I stood there looking at that old Farmall and something about it called to me. 71 years old, built in 1952. Same year my father was born, sitting in this shed slowly rusting away. Forgotten, written off, waiting for someone to care. Carol asked if I wanted to make an offer. I asked how much to haul the tractor away. She said probably $1,000, maybe more. I thought about that. Thought about $44,000. Thought about apartments in Billings. Thought about this broken-down farm in the middle of nowhere with a tractor that doesn't run and a house that's barely standing. I said I'll take it, all of it. $32,000, cash. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I have. But I signed the papers right there standing in that empty kitchen with mice scratching in the walls. Put down a deposit, closing in 2 weeks. Entry 5, April 10th. I own a farm now, 160 acres in Macomb County, Montana. The papers are signed. The money is transferred. $32,000 from my settlement, $1,800 in closing costs. I've got $10,200 left in the bank and I'm sitting in a house with no power and no running water writing this by flashlight. I moved in today. In is a generous word. I threw a sleeping bag on the floor of the one room that still has an intact ceiling. Brought a camp stove and a 5-gallon water jug and a cooler with 3 days of food. The temperature dropped to 32 degrees last night, and the house has no heat except a wood stove in the living room that I'm afraid to use because the chimney looks like it might collapse. This is what $10,000 buys you. A chance, maybe, or a slow death in the cold, hard to say which yet. Danny called tonight. My son, 28 years old, lives in Billings, Works as an electrician. We haven't talked much since he was a teenager. My fault mostly. I was too hard on him, expected too much. Wanted him to be tougher than a kid should have to be. He grew up and moved out, and we drifted into being strangers who share a last name. He heard about the divorce. Heard I bought a farm. He said, "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm figuring it out." He said, "You don't know anything about farming." I said I didn't know anything about construction either until I learned. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "This is crazy." I said, "Probably." He said, "Are you going to make it?" I said, "I don't know yet." He said, "Call me if you need anything." Then he hung up. I sat there in the dark after that call thinking about all the things I should have said. Thank you. I'm sorry. I miss you. All the things fathers should tell their sons but don't. But I didn't call him back. Just sat there in the silence of this empty house and felt the weight of every mistake I ever made pressing down on me like the roof that's about to cave in. Entry 6, April 12th. No power, no water, no heat. I've been here 2 days and I'm already wondering if I made the biggest mistake of my life. The power company wants $800 to reconnect service, deposit plus connection fee. The well pump is broken. I tried hand pumping water from the well, but it's either dry or the pump is seized. Either way, I'm hauling water from town in 5-gallon jugs. I spent today trying to patch the roof. Climbed up there with a tarp and some lumber scraps I found in the barn. The whole structure is soft. Plywood rotten through. I could feel it bending under my weight. Managed to get the tarp over the worst hole and nailed it down, but it's temporary at best. First big wind will probably rip it off. The barn is even worse up close. The foundation is crumbling. The walls are pulling away from the frame. I don't know how it's still standing except by habit. A building that's been standing so long it forgot how to fall down. I poked around inside and found old equipment rusting in the corners. A grain auger with a broken motor. Fence posts rotting in piles. 50 years of accumulated junk slowly returning to dust. But the machine shed. The machine shed is solid, concrete floor, metal walls still square and true, and in the center of it all, the Farmall. I spent an hour just looking at her, walked around her like she was a puzzle I was trying to solve. The paint is almost gone. Rust has eaten through the sheet metal in places. The tires are cracked and flat. The seat is torn down to the springs, but the bones are there. The frame, the engine, the transmission, all of it still bolted together. I tried to turn the engine over by hand, put a wrench on the crank pulley and pulled. Nothing. Tried again, still nothing. The engine is either seized or so tight it might as well be, but I've rebuilt engines before. Diesel engines on bulldozers and excavators. Big iron that hadn't run in years. Brought them back to life with patience and parts and stubbornness. Maybe I can do it again. Maybe this old Farmall has one more season in her. Or maybe she's just a 71-year-old pile of scrap metal, and I'm a fool for hoping otherwise. Entry 7, April 15th. A truck pulled into my driveway this morning. Old Ford pickup, probably from the 80s, rust bubbling through the blue paint. A man climbed out and walked toward the house, 70 years old at least, wearing Carhartt overalls and a John Deere cap faded almost white from sun and age. He knocked on the door frame. I opened the door and he said, "I'm Walt Drummond. I farm the section west of here. Heard someone bought Harlan's place. Came to see who was crazy enough." I introduced myself, told him my name. He looked past me into the house, saw my sleeping bag on the floor, the camp stove, the water jugs. He said, "You living here?" I said, "Trying to." He said, "You got power?" I said, "Not yet." He said, "You got water?" I said, "Hauling it from town." He didn't say anything for a minute, just stood there looking at me like he was measuring something. Then he said, "What do you know about farming?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "Why'd you buy a farm?" I told him the truth. Said I had $44,000 from a divorce and I needed it to last longer than a year in an apartment I couldn't afford. Said this place cost $32,000 and that left me enough to maybe survive while I learned. He nodded like that made sense. Like desperation is a reason he understands. He said, "You know anything about wells?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Show me yours." We walked around back to the well house. I showed him the pump. He looked at it for about 30 seconds and said, "You need a new pressure switch and a foot valve. Maybe $250 in parts. I can help you put it in if you want." I asked why he'd help me. He said, "Because Harlan was my friend for 40 years and I don't want to see his place die. Because neighbors help each other out here. Because I got nothing better to do since my wife passed." I didn't know what to say to that. Just nodded. He said, "I'll be back tomorrow with parts. Be ready to work." Entry 8, April 16th. Walt showed up at 7 this morning with a truck bed full of tools and a bag from the hardware store. We spent 6 hours pulling that well pump. It's a submersible, dropped down 120 feet in a 6-inch casing. We had to rig a tripod over the well and winch it up inch by inch. The pump itself was dead. Motor burned out. But Walt said the foot valve was probably the real problem. We lowered a new pump down that hole, praying the whole time that the wiring was still good. Connected everything up, flipped the breaker. The pump hummed to life. Water started flowing. It came out brown at first, rust and sediment from 6 years of sitting. We let it run for an hour. Slowly it cleared. By noon I had clean water running from the tap in the kitchen. I tried to pay Walt for the parts, $240. He waved me off. Said consider it a welcome to the neighborhood gift. I said that's too much. He said I got a pension and no one to spend it on. Let me do this. So I let him. We sat on the front porch drinking water from the tap. First water from my own well. It tasted like minerals and dirt and possibility. Walt asked about the Farmall. I said I'd been looking at her. Said the engine won't turn over. He said, "Let's go see." We walked out to the machine shed. Walt stood there looking at that tractor the way a doctor looks at a patient, walked around her, kicked the tires, pulled the dipstick and looked at the oil, checked the fuel tank. Finally he said she might run, might not, only one way to find out. He said first thing we need to know is if the engine is seized. If it's seized, it's not worth fixing. If it turns over, there's a chance. He went to his truck and came back with a breaker bar, 4 feet of steel leverage. We pulled the spark plugs out of the engine, 6 of them. Walt said pour some diesel in the cylinders. Let it soak overnight. Sometimes that'll loosen things up. I did what he said. Poured diesel down each cylinder until it wouldn't take any more. Walt said we'll try tomorrow, see if she'll turn. If she does, we keep going. If she doesn't, we both learned something. I asked what. He said that some things are too far gone to save, but we won't know until we try. Entry 9, April 17th. Walt came back this morning. We went straight to the machine shed. He put that breaker bar on the crank pulley. 4 feet of leverage against 71 years of rust and neglect. I held my breath. Walt pulled, nothing, pulled harder, still nothing. Then he put his whole body weight into it. The bar flexed. For a second I thought it was going to snap. Then something inside that engine gave. A grinding sound, metal on metal, but movement. The crank was turning. Walt kept pulling, slow, grinding, but turning. 1 revolution, 2, 3. The diesel we'd poured in the cylinders came spraying out the spark plug holes, black and foul smelling, but the engine was turning. Walt straightened up, breathing hard. He's 70 years old and he just fought a tractor to a draw. He looked at me and grinned. "She's not seized. You got a chance." We spent the rest of the day cleaning, drained the fuel tank. It was half full of varnish that used to be diesel, scraped it out, flushed it with fresh fuel, pulled the fuel filters. They were clogged solid. Walt said we need new filters, new fuel lines, new injectors probably. This is going to take time and money. I said how much money? He said if we do the work ourselves, maybe $1,500. If you pay someone else $4,000 or $5,000. I said I'll do it myself. Walt said I'll teach you. I got nothing but time. You got the Farmall and the need. That's enough. We shook hands on it. Two men in a machine shed making a promise over a tractor that hasn't run in 8 years. Maybe it means something. Maybe it doesn't. But it's the first promise anyone's made to me in a long time that felt solid. Entry 10, April 25th. 2 weeks of work. Every day Walt shows up at 7 and we work until dark. We've torn that Farmall down to her bones. Fuel system completely rebuilt. New injector pump. New lines, new filters, cleaned the fuel tank until it shined, drained the oil. It came out black as tar, refilled with fresh, 25 quarts. Changed all 6 spark plugs, cleaned the magneto, replaced the points and condenser, charged a new battery, $180. The radiator was full of rust. We pulled it, took it to a shop in Circle. They rotted it out and pressure tested it, $90. While we waited for that, we worked on other things, greased every fitting. 38 Zerk fittings on that tractor. Each one had to be cleaned and greased. Walt showed me how to do it right. Said maintenance is what keeps these old machines running. Miss the maintenance and you're walking. We replaced the clutch. That was 2 days of work. Had to split the tractor in half, separate the engine from the transmission. The clutch disc was worn down to nothing. The pressure plate was cracked. New parts cost $300. We put it all back together, torqued every bolt to spec. Walt said do it right or don't do it at all. Yesterday we put the radiator back on, filled the cooling system, bled the fuel system, everything ready. Walt said tomorrow we try to start her. I said what if she doesn't start? He said then we figure out why and fix it. That's all farming is. Figuring out what's broken and fixing it, over and over until you die or give up. I asked which one he did. He said neither. I'm still here. Entry 11, April 26th. The Farmall started today. We'd done everything we could. Fresh fuel, clean oil, new battery, good spark. Compression tested yesterday at 110 psi on all cylinders. Everything said she should run, but should and will are different things. I sat in that seat, 71 years old, the same seat Heartland sat in. The same seat every farmer who ever owned this machine sat in. The steering wheel was cracked. The paint mostly gone, but solid, real. I turned the key. The starter motor cranked. The engine turned over, slow at first, then faster. It coughed, died. I tried again, cranked, coughed, caught. The engine fired, rough, uneven. Black smoke pouring from the exhaust, but running. I sat there with that engine rattling beneath me and I couldn't move. Just sat there listening to it. 4 cylinders firing, not perfect, not smooth, but alive. Walt was standing next to me grinning like a kid. He yelled over the noise, let her warm up. I nodded. We let it run for 10 minutes. The smoke cleared. The rhythm evened out. She settled into a steady rumble. Walt climbed up on the fender, leaned in close so I could hear him. You did it. You brought her back. I said we did it. He said no. You did most of it. I just showed you how. You're the one who put in the hours, the work, the money. This is your machine now. Take care of her and she'll take care of you. I shut her down after 20 minutes. Let her cool. We stood there looking at her. A 71-year-old tractor that hasn't run in 8 years. Brought back to life by 2 men who needed something to believe in. Walt said, what are you going to do with her? I said, I don't know. I don't know how to farm. He said, I'll teach you. If you want to learn, I'll teach you. I asked why. Why spend all this time helping a stranger? He looked at me for a long minute. Then he said, because when Marie died 2 years ago, I thought about selling my place. Thought about moving to town, dying slow in some apartment. But then I'd see Harlan's farm sitting empty and it made me angry. Good land going to waste. Good equipment rotting away. I couldn't let it happen to my place too. Then you showed up. Crazy enough to buy this wreck. Stubborn enough to fix that tractor. You reminded me why I'm still here. So I'm helping you because you're helping me remember what matters. We shook hands again. Walt climbed in his truck and drove away. I stood in that machine shed looking at the Farmall. She's not pretty. Rust where paint should be. Dents and scratches from 71 years of work. But she runs. And if she runs, I can farm. And if I can farm, I can survive. Big ifs. But I've worked with bigger. Entry 12, May 1st. The power is on. Cost me $800 for the deposit and $400 for reconnection. Money I couldn't really afford but needed anyway. The house has lights now. The well pump runs without me standing there holding my breath. I can plug in my phone, charge my tools, small things, but they matter. Danny called again tonight, asked how it's going. I told him about the Farmall, told him we got her running. There was silence on the other end. Then he said, "You rebuilt a tractor." I said, "Walt helped." He said, "Still. You rebuilt a tractor." He sounded surprised, maybe proud. Hard to tell with him. We don't talk enough for me to read his voice anymore. I asked about his work. He said it's fine, steady, nothing exciting. Then he said, "I've been thinking about coming out there, see the place." I said, "You don't have to." He said, "I want to. Maybe next weekend if you're around." I said, "I'm not going anywhere." He said, "Okay, I'll let you know." After we hung up, I sat there thinking about Danny, about all the years we didn't talk, about the divorce and how it freed him from having to pick sides, about this farm and whether it's a second chance or just a different way to fail. I don't know, but he's coming to see it. That's something. Entry 13, May 8th. Danny showed up yesterday afternoon, drove 4 hours from Billings in his work truck. I watched him pull in the driveway, saw him looking at the house, the sagging roof, the boarded windows, the porch that's holding on by memory. He climbed out and stood there, just stood there looking. I walked out to meet him. We shook hands, formal, like business associates. He said, "So this is it." I said, "This is it." He walked around, looked at the barn, the machine shed, came back and said, "Dad, this place is a wreck." I said, "I know." He said, "You really going to make this work?" I said, "I'm going to try." I showed him the Farmall, fired her up. Let him hear that engine running. He's an electrician, knows machines. He walked around the tractor while it was running, looked at the engine, the transmission, climbed up and looked at the controls. When I shut her down, he said, "You rebuilt this." I said, "Mostly." He said, "That's actually impressive. Coming from Danny, that's high praise." We worked together that afternoon. Fixed a section of fence that had fallen down. Didn't talk much, just worked. That's how we've always been. Better with tools than words. By evening, we'd reset 4 posts and restrung 200 feet of wire. Not much, but functional. At dinner, I made hamburgers on the camp stove. We sat on the porch eating and watching the sun go down over flat land that goes on forever. Danny said, "It's quiet out here." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You like it." I said, "I'm getting used to it." He said, "Mom thinks you've lost your mind." I said, "She's probably right." He almost smiled at that. He stayed the night, slept in his truck because the house only has 1 room that's livable. This morning he helped me move some lumber. Around 10 he said he should get back. I walked him to his truck. He said, "Dad, if you need help with anything, call me." I said, "I will." He said, "I mean it." I said, "I know." He drove away and I stood there in the driveway watching until the dust settled. My son came to see me, helped me fix fence, told me to call if I need help. That's more than I had a month ago. That's progress. Entry 14, May 15th. Walt has been teaching me about soil, about what grows here and what doesn't. Eastern Montana is hard country, 12 inches of rain a year on average, short growing season, late frosts in spring, early frosts in fall. The land is either too wet or too dry, mostly too dry, dryland farming they call it. No irrigation. You take what the sky gives you and you make it work or you don't. He said the best crop for a beginner is hay, alfalfa or a grass mix. You plant it once and it grows for years. Cut it twice a summer if you're lucky. Bale it. Sell it to ranchers for cattle feed. It's forgiving. Doesn't require perfect timing. Doesn't need expensive inputs. Good first crop. I asked what Heartland grew. Walt said wheat mostly. Winter wheat planted in September, harvested in July. Spring wheat planted in April, harvested in August. Wheat is a gamble. You put money in the ground and pray for rain at the right times. If the weather cooperates, you make money. If it doesn't, you lose everything you planted. Harlan gambled for 40 years, won more than he lost, but the losses hurt. Walt said I should plant 40 acres of hay this spring. Learn the equipment, learn the rhythms. Next year maybe try some wheat. I said I don't have planting equipment. He said I'll loan you mine. We'll plant together, I'll teach you. I said I can't keep taking from you. He said you're not taking, I'm giving. There's a difference. Entry 15, June 1st. 2 months on this farm. I've got power and water. The roof is patched well enough to keep rain out of the one room I sleep in. The Farmall runs. Rough, loud, smoking more than she should, but she runs. Walt and I have been working her every day, getting her ready for field work. We hooked up a disc harrow. Old piece of equipment Walt had sitting behind his barn, discs rusted but functional. We pulled it behind the Farmall out to the east 40 acres that haven't been worked in 6 years, covered in cheatgrass and tumbleweeds. Walt showed me how to set the disc depth, how to overlap passes, how to keep the rows straight. I spent 3 days on that tractor, 8 hours a day, turning soil. The Farmall pulled steady, never complained, just kept pulling, turning ground that hadn't been turned in years. By the end of day 3 my back ached. My shoulders were tight. My hands were blistered even through gloves, but the field was disked. 40 acres of broken ground ready for seed. Walt brought his drill over, a piece of equipment that plants seeds in rows. We filled it with a mix of alfalfa and Timothy grass. 400 pounds of seed, $12 a pound, $4,800. Money I had to borrow from Walt. Money I'll pay back after harvest, if there is a harvest. We planted together, Walt on his tractor pulling the drill, me following behind making sure everything was working, the seeds dropping into the ground at the right depth, the press wheels covering them. 2 days of work, 40 acres planted, my first crop in the ground. Standing at the edge of that field after we finished, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Purpose maybe, or hope, hard to say which. But I looked at that dirt and knew that underneath it seeds were waiting. In a month there would be green. In 3 months there would be hay, something from nothing. That's what farming is. You put faith in the ground and wait to see if it gives anything back. Entry 16, June 10th. Money is getting tight. The $44,000 I started with is down to $6,200. I spent $32 on the farm, $1,800 on closing costs, $800 on power, $400 on connection fees, $1,500 on Farmall parts, $400 on the radiator and clutch, $300 on fence materials, $240 on well parts, food and fuel, and 100 other small expenses I didn't think about. The math is simple. I'm running out. The hay won't be ready to cut until August. Maybe late July if we get lucky with weather. That's 2 months away. I need income now. Walt suggested firewood, said I've got timber in the creek bottom, dead cottonwoods, I could cut them, split them, sell them to people in town. Firewood sells for $180 a cord around here. If I could cut and sell 10 cords, that's $1,800, enough to survive until harvest. I don't own a chainsaw. Walt said he'd loan me one, show me how to use it safely. I said I'll buy my own. Can't keep borrowing. He said suit yourself but don't buy new. Check the classifieds. Someone's always selling a used saw. I found one yesterday. Stihl MS-290, 20-inch bar, $320. Drove to Glendive to pick it up. The guy who sold it showed me how to sharpen the chain, how to mix the fuel, how to not cut my leg off. Tomorrow I start cutting firewood. Another thing I don't know how to do. Another skill I'll learn because I have to. That's what this whole thing is. Learning because there's no other choice. Sink or swim. Do or die. All the clichés are true when you're living them. Entry 17, June 15th. First week of firewood cutting is done. My body hurts in places I didn't know could hurt. Chainsaw work is brutal. The saw vibrates in your hands for hours. Your shoulders carry the weight. Your back twists and bends. Your ears ring even through hearing protection. By the end of each day, I can barely move. But I've cut 3 cords, dropped dead cottonwoods, bucked them into 16-inch rounds, split them with a maul because I can't afford a splitter. Each round takes 4 or 5 hits, sometimes more if there's a knot. I'm getting better at reading the wood, finding the cracks, placing the maul where the wood wants to split, but it's slow. A full cord takes me 2 days, cut one day, split the next. I posted on Facebook Marketplace. Firewood for sale. 180 delivered, got my first order today. A woman in Circle needs 2 cords. I loaded my truck, drove the 12 miles, stacked it in her yard. She paid cash, $360. I sat in that truck after and looked at the money. 2 days of work, blisters on my hands, pain in my back. $360, not much, but mine. Entry 18, June 30th. End of June. 3 months on this farm. The hay is growing, came up thick and green after 2 weeks. Got a good rain in early June. 3 inches. The field looks like a carpet now. Knee high. Walt says it's ahead of schedule. We might cut in late July. That's good news. I need good news. The firewood business is working. Slowly. I've sold 6 cords. $1,080. Barely enough to cover food and fuel and the small expenses that never stop. But it's keeping me alive, keeping me here. Every morning I wake up in this house. Every morning I make the choice to stay, to keep working, to keep believing this will work out somehow. Danny has been calling more often, every few days, asks how it's going. I tell him about the firewood, about the hay, about the Farmall. He listens. Sometimes he offers advice. Mostly he just listens. Last night he said, "Dad, you sound different." I asked, "Different how?" He said, "I don't know. Less tired maybe." I said, "I'm exhausted every day." He said, "Yeah, but it's a different kind of tired. Like you're tired from doing something instead of tired from doing nothing." I thought about that after we hung up. He's right. In Billings I was tired from sitting in traffic, tired from meetings that meant nothing, tired from coming home to a house where nobody was happy. This tired is different. This is muscle tired, bone tired. The kind of tired that comes from cutting wood and planting crops and fixing a tractor that should have died years ago. This tired has purpose, and purpose makes all the difference. Walt came by tonight, brought me a book, old paperback, the cover falling off. Title said Farming the Dryland Way. He said Marie used to read this when we started, taught her more than I could, thought it might help you. I thanked him, asked if he needed it back. He said keep it. I got everything from that book I'm going to get. Now it's yours. After he left, I sat on the porch and started reading. Chapter 1. Understanding Your Soil. I read until the light was too dim to see. Then I went inside and read by battery lantern until my eyes hurt. This is my life now. Reading farming books by lantern light in a house with holes in the walls. Cutting firewood to survive until harvest. Praying that 40 acres of hay will give me enough to make it through winter. It's not the life I planned. It's not the life anyone would choose, but it's mine. Every decision, every consequence, every small victory and every failure, all mine. And there's freedom in that, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because hard means I'm doing something real. Hard means I haven't given up. The Farmall sits in the shed waiting for harvest. The hay grows in the field waiting to be cut. I sit in this house waiting to see if any of this works. We're all waiting, all hoping, all betting on a future that hasn't been written yet. That's farming. That's life. That's all any of us can do. My name is Robert Keller. I'm 52 years old. 3 months ago, I signed divorce papers and got a check for $44,000. Today, I own a farm, run a tractor, cut firewood, plant crops. I don't know if I'll make it. Don't know if this land will give me what I need to survive. But I'm here. I'm trying. And for the first time in 25 years, that feels like enough. Entry 1, July 1st, 2023. Independence Day weekend coming up. Walt stopped by this morning and said we need to rebuild the Farmall's hydraulic pump before hay cutting. The pump is what lifts and lowers implements, the disc, the rake, the baler. Without a working pump I can't farm. He said the seals are probably shot. 60 years of heat cycling and they dry out, crack, leak, stop working. We need to pull it apart and replace everything inside. I asked how much. He said the rebuild kit is $80. The labor is free if we do it ourselves, should take a day. Maybe 2 if we run into trouble. I said let's do it. We spent the afternoon draining hydraulic fluid, disconnecting lines, unbolting the pump from the tractor. By evening we had it on the workbench in the machine shed. Walt said we'll start fresh tomorrow. Bring beer, it's the 4th of July. We should at least pretend to celebrate. Entry 2, July 4th. Independence Day. I'm 52 years old and I spent it flat on my back under a tractor replacing gaskets in a hydraulic pump. Walt brought Coors Light in cans. We drank it warm because I don't have a refrigerator that works. Sat on the concrete floor of the machine shed with our backs against the Farmall's rear tires. Grease under our fingernails. Oil stains on our clothes. 2 men celebrating freedom by choosing to work on a holiday. Walt told me about Marie, his wife. They married young, 20 years old. She was a town girl, didn't know anything about farming, but she learned. Learned to drive tractor, learned to fix fence, learned to read weather and soil and cattle, became a better farmer than him, he said. Better at the small things, the attention to detail, the patience. He said I was the muscle, she was the brains. Together we made it work. She got sick 8 years ago, breast cancer, fought it for 2 years, hospitals and treatments and hope that slowly died. She passed 6 years ago. He said the first year after was the hardest. The farm felt empty. The house felt empty. Everything felt empty. He thought about quitting, selling out, moving to town, dying slow in some apartment, but he couldn't do it, couldn't let go of the land they'd worked together. So he stayed, kept farming, kept living. Because that's what she would have wanted. He said you remind me of her. I asked how. He said because you didn't know anything when you started, but you're learning, not because it's easy, because you have to. That's what she did. Learned because there was no other choice. I said I'm sorry about Marie. He said don't be sorry, be grateful you got to know her through me. I said I am. We finished the hydraulic pump rebuild by evening. New seals, new O-rings, new gaskets, everything tight and clean. Reinstalled it on the Farmall, filled the reservoir with fresh fluid, tested it. The pump hummed. The lift arms raised and lowered smooth. Walt said she's ready. I said for what? He said for whatever you ask her to do. Entry 3, July 10th. The hay is ready. Walt walked the field yesterday and said another week and it'll be perfect. The alfalfa is thick, 3 feet tall, purple flowers just starting to show. Timothy grass mixed in. Good feed, good quality. He said we'll cut next week. Let it dry for 3 days, rake it into windrows, bale it. Should get maybe 200 bales off 40 acres. First year seeding usually doesn't yield heavy. But 200 bales at $6 each is $1,200. Not much. But it's a start. I asked what equipment we need. He said I'll bring the mower and the rake. You'll need a baler. I said I don't have one. He said I know. You can rent one from the equipment dealer in Circle, $300 for the week. Or you can buy a used one for $3,000. I said I'll rent. Can't afford to buy yet. He said smart. Rent this year. See if you want to keep farming. If you do, you can buy equipment next year. I drove to Circle this afternoon, talked to the dealer, reserved a small square baler for next week. He said bring a truck to pick it up. I said I'll tow it behind my truck. He said you got a truck that can pull a baler. I said I've got a 97 Silverado with 160,000 miles. He said that'll do. I paid the deposit, $150 up front, $150 when I return it. Money I don't really have, but money I need to spend to make money. That's farming. Spending money, you don't have to make money you're not sure you'll get. Entry 4, July 18th. First cutting started today. Walt showed up at dawn with his tractor and a sickle bar mower. We hooked it up and he showed me how to adjust the cutting height, how to overlap passes, how to watch for rocks that'll break the blades. Then he climbed down and said, "You drive." I said, "I've never cut hay before." He said, "You've never done a lot of things before. Time to learn." I drove the Farmall out to the field, the mower trailing behind, engaged the power takeoff. The sickle bar started moving, reciprocating blades cutting through stems. I lowered it into the hay and started my first pass. The mower cut clean, hay falling in neat rows behind me. The smell of fresh cut alfalfa filled the air, sweet and green and alive. I spent 8 hours on that tractor, cutting in straight lines, turning at the ends, overlapping just enough to not miss anything. Walt followed in his truck, watching, making sure I didn't screw it up. By evening, the whole 40 acres was down, laying in the sun, starting to dry. Walt said, "Good job." I said, "I just drove straight." He said, "That's all cutting is. Drive straight, don't hit anything. Let the equipment do the work." I said, "It's harder than it looks." He said, "Everything is. That's why most people don't do it." Entry 5, July 21st. 3 days of sun. The hay dried perfect. This morning we raked it into windrows, long rows of hay ready to bale. Walt brought his side delivery rake, showed me how to set the angle, how to make rows that are tight enough to bale but not so tight they won't dry. I drove the Farmall again, getting comfortable with her now. Know her sounds, know how she pulls, know when to downshift for a hill, when to throttle up for speed. By noon the whole field was raked. We took a break, sat in the shade of Walt's truck and ate sandwiches, drank water from a cooler. He said, "Tomorrow we bale. You ready?" I said, "As ready as I'll get." He said, "You'll do fine, just feed the hay steady. Don't rush, don't jam the baler, it'll tell you when it wants more." I picked up the rented baler this afternoon, small square baler, makes bales about 40 pounds each, 2 strings. Walt helped me hitch it to the Farmall, showed me how to thread the twine, how to adjust the tension, said the baler is simple. Hay goes in, bales come out. If it jams, you stop and clear it, don't force anything. I said, "Understood." Entry 6, July 22nd. Baling day. We started at first light. The hay was dry, windrows perfect. I drove slow down the first row. The baler pickup lifted the hay, fed it into the chamber, the plunger compressed it. When the bale was full, the needle threaded twine around it, tied it, kicked it out the back. One bale, then another, then another. The rhythm hypnotic. Drive, feed, compress, tie, kick, repeat. Walt followed behind on his truck, stacking bales. By mid-morning we had 50 done, by afternoon 100. My arms ached from steering. My back hurt from twisting to watch the baler, but I kept going. This is my crop, my hay, my first harvest. I'm not stopping until it's done. The baler jammed twice, once from feeding too fast, once from a stick that got caught in the plunger. Both times I shut down, cleared it, started again. Walt said, "That's normal. Balers jam, that's what they do. Learn to fix it quick and keep moving." By evening we finished. 280 bales, more than Walt predicted. He said the stand was thicker than he thought. Good soil, good seed, good weather, everything came together. We stacked them in the barn, rows of bales 4 high. The barn I thought would fall down holding hay I grew. The symmetry of that isn't lost on me. Walt bought 100 bales, $6 each, $600 cash. Said his cattle will eat them this winter. I'll sell the rest at the local sale next week. Should get another 450 maybe. Total 1150, not the 1200 I hoped for, but close enough. My first farm income from my own land. Entry 7, July 25th. I deposited the check today, $600 from Walt, drove to the bank in Circle. The teller recognized me. Said, "You're the one bought the Peterson place." I said, "That's right." She said, "How's it going?" I said, "I just harvested my first hay crop." She smiled, said, "Good for you. We need more people willing to work the land." Driving back, I thought about that. People willing to work the land, that's what I am now. A person who works land, grows things, produces food. It's not who I thought I'd be at 52, but it's who I am. And for the first time in years, that feels right. Danny called tonight, asked how the hay went. I told him about the cutting and raking and baling, told him about the 280 bales. He said, "That's actually impressive, Dad." I said, "Walt did most of the teaching." Danny said, "Yeah, but you did the work, that counts." We talked for 20 minutes about hay, about the Farmall, about weather, normal things, father and son talking like it's normal. Maybe it can be. Entry 8, July 30th. Sold the rest of the hay at the livestock auction in Circle. 180 bales, got $490. Some bales went for $3, some for $250. Lower quality stuff, but it's sold. Total from first cutting is $1090. Not enough to live on, but enough to prove this can work. I paid Walt back for the seed, $400. He tried to refuse it. I said we had a deal. "You fronted me the seed, I pay you back after harvest." He took the money. Said, "You're an honest man, Rob Keller." I said, "I'm trying to be." He said, "That's all any of us can do." Money in the bank now is $5,600. Hay income minus seed payback minus baler rental minus fuel and small expenses. I've got enough to survive until second cutting in September. Maybe. If nothing breaks, if nothing goes wrong. That's a lot of ifs. Entry 9, August 5th. Danny showed up today. No warning, just pulled in the driveway around noon. I was working on the Farmall changing oil. He climbed out and said, "I've got a week off. Thought I'd come help if you need it." I said, "I always need help." He said, "Good. Where do we start?" We spent the afternoon fixing fence. A section along the south property line had fallen, posts rotted through, wire rusted. We pulled the old posts, dug new holes, set new posts in concrete, stretched new wire tight. Hard work in August heat, but we worked well together, didn't need to talk much, just understood the rhythm. One digs, one mixes concrete, one stretches wire, repeat until done. By evening we had 200 feet of fence rebuilt. Solid, straight, functional. We stood back and looked at it. Danny said, "It's good work." I said, "You did most of it." He said, "We did it together. That's better." At dinner I cooked steaks on the camp stove. We ate outside watching the sun drop below the horizon. The sky turning orange, then purple, then black. Stars coming out thick like they never do in the city. Danny said, "I forgot how many stars there are out here." I said, "Me too." He said, "You going to make it, Dad? The farm, I mean." "Are you going to make it?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm trying." He said, "That's more than a lot of people do." Entry 10, August 8th. 3 days of work with Danny. We insulated 2 more rooms in the house, replaced broken windows, fixed the porch steps so they don't flex when you step on them. Small things, but they add up. The house feels more solid now, more like a home. Danny asked about the Farmall, said, "Can I drive her?" I said, "You know how to drive a tractor." He said, "I can figure it out." We walked to the machine shed. I showed him the controls, clutch, throttle, gear shift, PTO lever, hydraulics. He climbed up, started her, let her warm up, then eased out the clutch. The Farmall lurched, stalled. He tried again, smoother. She moved forward. He drove her out of the shed, around the yard, getting a feel for her. After 20 minutes he was shifting smooth. Turning tight. He said she handles good. I said, for a 71-year-old machine she's not bad. We hooked up the disc. Danny pulled it to the field, worked the ground for an hour. When he came back he said, "I get it now. Why you bought this place. Why you're doing this. There's something about driving a tractor, working land, making things grow. It's real." I said, "Yeah, it is." He said, "I've been thinking, maybe I could spend more time out here, help you build this thing." I said, "You've got a job, a life." He said, "My job is fine, my life is fine, but this is something different. Something better, maybe." I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't want to hope too much. But I said, "If you want to come out, you're always welcome. He said, I know. I'll think about it. Entry 11, August 12th. Danny left this morning, had to get back to Billings, back to work. Before he left, he said, I'm serious about what I said, about spending more time here. I said, I know. He said, I'll talk to my boss, see if I can work 4 days a week. Spend 3 out here. Would that help? I said it would help a lot. He said, then I'll make it happen. We shook hands. Then he did something he hasn't done in 10 years. He hugged me, quick, awkward but real. He said, see you soon, Dad. Then he drove away. I stood in the driveway after he left thinking about that hug, about my son wanting to spend time here, wanting to help build this farm. I don't know if it's the land or the work or something else, but something out here is healing what was broken between us, and that's worth more than any hay crop. Entry 12, August 20th. Walt had a doctor appointment in Billings yesterday. Asked if I wanted to ride along, keep him company. I said sure. We left early, drove 3 hours west. He didn't say much about why he was going, just said routine checkup, make sure everything's working. We got to the clinic around 10. He went in, I waited in the truck. 90 minutes later he came out, looked tired. I asked if everything's okay. He said, I'm 70, nothing's okay, but I'm not dead yet, so that's something. I didn't push. If he wants to tell me, he will. On the drive back, he said Marie used to make me go to the doctor, said I'd ignore everything until it killed me. She was probably right. Now I go because if I die, there's no one to take care of the place. The cattle, the land. He paused, then said, until you showed up. Now I go because I want to see how your farm turns out. I said I'm not going anywhere. He said, good, because I'm counting on you to keep this valley farming. Someone has to, might as well be you. I said, that's a lot of pressure. He said, that's responsibility. Get used to it. Entry 13, September 1st. Second cutting time. The hay grew back faster than expected. Good rain in August. Warm weather. The stand is thick again. Walt said we should get 300 bales this time, maybe more. That would put me over $1,500 total from hay, enough to cover winter expenses if I'm careful. We cut yesterday, rake today. Tomorrow we bale. The rhythm is familiar now. I know what to do, know how to read the hay, know when it's dry enough, when it's too dry. The learning curve is steep, but I'm climbing it. Every day a little better, a little more confident. The Farmall is running strong. I've put maybe 60 hours on her since we got her started, changed the oil twice, greased every fitting, checked the coolant. She's holding up, not smoking as much. The engine sounds tighter, breaking in after years of sitting, or maybe I'm just getting used to her sounds. Either way, she's doing her job. Entry 14, September 3rd. Baling finished. 320 bales, better than expected. We stacked them in the barn alongside the bales from first cutting. The barn is full now. Hay stacked to the rafters. If this barn falls, it'll bury $1,000 worth of feed. But it's holding. Old wood and rusty nails somehow holding against gravity and time. Walt bought 150 bales this time, $900. I'll sell the rest next week. Should get another 500. Total from second cutting 1,400. Combined with first cutting 2,500 total from 40 acres of hay. My first year and I'm profitable on hay. Not by much, but enough. I paid myself $500. First money I've taken as salary. Put it in a separate account. Living money. The rest stays in the farm account for expenses. Winter is coming. I'll need every dollar for propane and firewood and repairs I can't predict yet. Entry 15, September 15th. Fall is here, temperature dropping at night, frost warning starting. The growing season is almost over. I've survived my first summer as a farmer, barely, but survived. The hay is sold. The Farmall is running. The house is livable. I've got $5,000 in the bank. Not rich, not even comfortable, but alive. Walt stopped by tonight, said he's been thinking about next year, said I should plant wheat. 80 acres of winter wheat, planted in late September. It germinates before winter, goes dormant under snow, comes back in spring, harvest in July. He said wheat is a gamble, but the payoff is bigger than hay. 80 acres could bring $10,000 if everything goes right, could bring nothing if it doesn't. I said I don't have a grain drill. He said I'll loan you mine. I said I can't keep borrowing your equipment. He said then buy your own. I know a guy selling a used drill, $1,800. I said I'll think about it. He said don't think too long. Planting window is 3 weeks. After that it's too late. Entry 16, September 20th. I bought the drill, $1,800 for a piece of equipment that's probably 50 years old, but Walt checked it over and said it's solid. Needs some grease and a couple worn parts replaced, but it'll plant wheat. That's all it needs to do. Danny called, said he talked to his boss. He can work Monday through Thursday in Billings. Come out here Friday through Sunday, starting next month. I said, you sure about this? He said, I'm sure. I need to get out of the city. Need to do something with my hands. This is it. I said, I can't pay you yet. He said, I'm not asking for pay. I'm asking to be part of this. I said, what about your girlfriend? He said, we broke up. She wanted to get married. I didn't, so we ended it. Now I'm free to do what I want, and I want to do this. I told him the truth. Told him I don't know if this farm will make it. Told him winter is coming and I'm not ready. Told him the money is running out and the work never stops. He said, I know. That's why you need help. I said, okay, come out. We'll figure it out together. Entry 17, September 28th. Wheat planting started today. 80 acres of winter wheat. Walt brought his tractor. I drove the Farmall. We ran 2 drills at once, his and the one I bought, doubling our speed. The drills drop seed into furrows, cover it, pack it. Simple but effective. We planted 40 acres the first day, another 40 tomorrow. The seed cost $1,400, bought on credit from the grain elevator in Circle, due at harvest next July. If the crop fails, I owe $1,400. If it succeeds, I'll make $8,000 to $10,000. Maybe more if prices are good. That's the gamble. Everything riding on weather I can't control and prices I can't predict. But I'm betting anyway. Betting on rain coming at the right time. Betting on winter not being too harsh. Betting on spring being gentle. Betting on myself to learn fast enough to not screw it up. Big bets. But I've already bet everything I have on this farm. What's a little more risk? Entry 18, September 29th. Planting finished. 80 acres of winter wheat in the ground. The seeds sitting there waiting for rain, waiting for germination, waiting for winter. We won't see results until spring. Until then it's faith. Faith that the ground will hold the seed, that water will come, that life will return. Walt and I stood at the edge of the field after we finished, looking at bare dirt that held our future. He said every year I planted I felt this. The uncertainty, the hope, the fear. He said you never get used to it, never stop worrying, but you do it anyway. Because what else are you going to do? Quit, give up, let the land go back to grass. I said, is that a question or a statement? He said both. Entry 19, October 5th. Danny moved in today, officially. Brought his truck loaded with tools and clothes and everything he owns that matters. I cleared out the bunkhouse for him. Old hired hand quarters attached to the barn. 1 room, with stove for heat. No running water, but there's a sink that drains to outside. He'll shower in the main house. It's not much, but it's his. He spent the afternoon unloading, setting up, making it home. I helped carry the heavy stuff, his toolboxes, his welding equipment. He's an electrician, but he knows metalwork too. Said it might come in handy out here. I said everything comes in handy out here. At dinner we talked about the plan. He'll work in Billings Monday through Thursday, drive out Thursday night. Work the farm Friday through Sunday. I said that's a lot of driving. He said it's 200 miles. I've driven worse for less reason. I said, what do you want to work on first? He said, whatever needs doing most. I made a list. Insulate the rest of the house before winter, fix the barn roof, build a proper woodshed, service all the equipment, cut firewood, 100 other things. He looked at the list and said we better get started. Entry 20, October 15th. 2 weeks with Danny here on weekends. We've accomplished more than I did all summer alone. The house is fully insulated now, every wall, every ceiling. We sealed the windows, caulked every crack. The propane bill this winter should be half what it was going to be. We fixed the barn roof, replaced rotten rafters, put on new metal roofing, cost $800 in materials, but now the hay will stay dry. The barn will stand another 20 years, maybe more. Danny rebuilt the Farmall's clutch adjustment, said it was slipping, showed me how to set the free play correct, how to test it. He's good with machinery, better than me in some ways. He sees things I miss, hears sounds I don't notice. We make a good team. Walt came by yesterday, saw all the work we'd done, said, Danny, you're a hell of a worker. Danny said, I learned from my dad. Walt looked at me, didn't say anything, didn't need to. The look said everything. Entry 21, October 28th. First snow today. Just flurries, nothing sticking, but a reminder that winter is coming. I'm more ready this year than last. Propane tank full, firewood stacked, 6 cords cut and split, house insulated, food stored, the Farmall winterized and covered. But I'm still nervous. Winter in Montana is no joke. 6 months of cold, endless gray skies, wind that cuts through everything. Last year I nearly froze. This year I've got Danny. I've got Walt. I've got systems in place. But that doesn't mean it'll be easy. The wheat germinated, tiny green shoots across 80 acres. It came up thick and even. Good stand. Now it'll grow until the ground freezes, then go dormant, survive under snow, come back in spring if it survives, if the winter doesn't kill it, if, always if. Entry 22, November 1st. November, the month everything dies or goes to sleep. The leaves are gone, the grass is brown, the sky is gray more days than not, but the work continues. Danny and I have been cutting firewood every weekend. We're up to 10 cords now. Should be enough to heat both houses all winter, his bunkhouse and my main house. We work well together. He runs the chainsaw, I split with the maul, we stack together. By Sunday evening we're both exhausted, covered in sawdust, hands blistered, but the woodpile grows, and growing the woodpile means surviving the winter. Walt's been quiet lately. I asked if he's okay. He said, I'm fine, just tired. I said, you sure? He said, I'm 70, Rob. Tired is my natural state, but he didn't look right, looked older somehow, more fragile. I'm keeping an eye on him. Entry 23, November 10th. Sold the last of the second cutting hay. 170 bales, $510. Total farm income for the year is $3,010 from hay. Not much, but it's real income from real work. I produced something, sold it, made money. That's farming. I calculated my expenses, seed, equipment rental, fuel, maintenance, parts, everything. Total expenses about $1,800. Net profit $1,210 for the year, plus the $500 I paid myself. Total $1,710 for 6 months of work. That's about $14 an hour if I worked 40-hour weeks. But I worked more like 60. So really it's $9 an hour. $9 an hour, that's what I made my first year farming. I made more as a construction foreman, a lot more. But I wasn't building my own future there. I was building someone else's. Here every dollar is mine. Every acre is mine. That's worth something money can't measure. Entry 24, November 22nd. Thanksgiving, Danny and I drove to Walt's place. He invited us for dinner, said he's been cooking since yesterday, turkey and all the fixings. When we got there, the table was set for three, Walt in his flannel shirt and clean jeans, the house smelling like roasted turkey and bread stuffing. We sat down and Walt said, "Let's not pretend to pray. None of us believe in that, but let's acknowledge what we're grateful for." He went first, said, "I'm grateful for neighbors who became friends, for work that still matters, for another year on this land." Danny went next, said, "I'm grateful for a second chance with my dad, for work that uses my hands, for finding a place that feels like home." Then it was my turn. I said, "I'm grateful for a tractor that runs, for a neighbor who teaches, for a son who came back, for land that gives me purpose, for all of you." Walt raised his glass, said, "To another year." We drank. Then we ate. After dinner, Walt told stories about farming in the 70s, about Marie, about droughts and blizzards and neighbors who helped each other survive. Danny listened like he was learning scripture, asked questions, laughed at the right parts. I watched them and realized this is what family looks like now. Not blood, choice. We chose each other, and that's stronger. Entry 25, December 1st. Winter is here for real now. Temperature hasn't been above freezing in a week, snow on the ground, more coming. Walt stopped by today and said we need to talk. He looked serious. We sat in the kitchen. He said, "I've got a heart condition. Had it for years, it's getting worse. Doctor says I need to slow down, maybe stop farming altogether." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "It means I can't help you like I have been. Can't work long days. Can't lift heavy things. Can't be your backup when things go wrong." I said, "You've already done more than I could ever repay." He said, "I'm not done yet. I'll still advise, still teach. Just can't do the physical work anymore." He said, "That's why I'm glad Danny's here. You'll need him." I said, "I know." He said, "The wheat is in. The hay equipment is ready for spring. You've learned the basics. From here it's just repetition. Do what I taught you. Don't take shortcuts. Don't ignore the small things. Maintenance matters. Weather matters. Timing matters." I said, "I'll remember." He said, "You better. I won't be around forever to remind you." That hit me harder than I expected. Walt not being around, the farm without him. I've only known him 8 months, but he's become essential, like oxygen, like hope. I said, "You're not going anywhere." He said, "We'll see. For now, I'm still here, still watching, still caring how this turns out." Entry 26, December 20th. 10 days until the shortest day of the year. The sun sets at 4:30, rises at 7:30, 9 hours of daylight, 15 hours of dark. This is the hard part of winter, the endless dark, the cold that never breaks, the isolation that seeps into your bones. But I'm not alone this year. Danny is here, working on equipment in the barn, building things, learning things. Every weekend he shows up and we tackle the list. The never-ending list of things that need fixing or building or maintaining. Last weekend we rebuilt the grain auger motor. This weekend we're fabricating a new gate for the corral. Next weekend, who knows? The work keeps us sane, keeps us warm, keeps us connected. 2 men in a barn working metal and wood and machinery while winter rages outside. That's how you survive. You work, you build. You don't think too much about what might go wrong. Entry 27, December 31st. New Year's Eve. 1 year ago I was signing divorce papers, getting handed a check for $44,000, wondering what the hell I was going to do with the rest of my life. Now I'm sitting in a farmhouse I own, looking at 80 acres of winter wheat growing under snow, a tractor in the shed that runs because I fixed her, a son in the bunkhouse who chose to be here, a neighbor who became family. The money is almost gone. I've got $3,000 in the bank. That has to last until wheat harvest in July, 7 months. I'll survive on firewood sales and hope, but I've survived worse. I've survived a marriage ending. I've survived not knowing who I am. I've survived the first year of farming. I can survive this. Danny came to the house tonight. We sat by the wood stove drinking coffee, not talking much, just sitting. He said, "Dad, what do you think next year looks like?" I said, "I think it looks like work, like hope, like more of what we're doing now." He said, "Good, because I like what we're doing now." I said, "Me too," and I meant it. This life is hard, harder than anything I've done. But it's mine. Every decision, every consequence, every small victory, mine. And having Danny here to share it makes it mean more, makes it matter more. Jessica called from Seattle tonight, 29 years old, works as a nurse at Swedish Medical Center. She said, "Dad, I'm proud of you." I said, "For what?" She said, "For making it a year, for not giving up, for showing Danny what it means to work for something." I said, "I'm just trying to survive." She said, "You're doing more than surviving. You're building something." I said, "Maybe." She said, "Definitely." The Farmall sits in the shed waiting for spring. The wheat sleeps under snow waiting for warmth. I sit in this house waiting for whatever comes next. We're all waiting, all hoping, all believing that broken things can be fixed if you're willing to do the work. That's the lesson. That's the truth. That's all any of us need to know. Entry 1, January 5, 2024. The coldest January in 20 years. That's what the Weather Service is saying. Arctic air pushing down from Canada. Temperatures dropping to 30 below. Wind chill making it feel like 50 below. The kind of cold that kills exposed skin in minutes. The kind of cold that breaks water pipes and freezes diesel fuel and makes you wonder why anyone ever settled this country. Danny and I are burning through firewood faster than I calculated. A cord every 4 days instead of a cord a week. At this rate, we'll run out by March. I spent yesterday cutting more. Chainsaw work in weather so cold the bar oil turns to syrup. The saw bogs down. Your hands go numb even in insulated gloves. But you keep cutting because if you stop cutting you freeze. Walt called this morning, asked if we're okay. I said we're burning a lot of wood. He said I'll bring some over. I said you don't need to do that. He said I've got 10 cords I'm not using. Propane heat now because of my heart. The wood is just sitting there. Might as well burn it. I said I'll pick it up. He said Danny can use my truck. I'll leave the keys in it. That's how it works out here. People help because that's what you do. Because next winter it might be you who runs short. Because community is the only thing standing between survival and freezing to death alone. Entry 2, January 12th. Week 2 of the deep freeze. Temperature hasn't been above 0 in 9 days. The house stays at 60 degrees with the wood stove running full blast. The bunkhouse where Danny sleeps is colder, maybe 55. He's burning wood round the clock, getting up every 3 hours through the night to feed the stove. I told him to sleep in the main house. He said, "I'm fine. I'm not fine, but I'm surviving. That's all that matters." The Farmall sits under a tarp in the machine shed. I check on her every few days. Make sure mice haven't built nests in the air cleaner. Make sure the tarp hasn't blown off. She's waiting, patient, ready for spring. I pat her hood when I visit, talk to her like she can hear me. Tell her we're going to make it through this. Tell her spring is coming. Tell her we've got work to do. Maybe I'm losing my mind. Maybe talking to a tractor is the first sign of cabin fever, but it makes me feel better. Makes me feel less alone. Entry 3, January 18th. Danny and I went to town today, first time in a week. Needed groceries, needed to see other humans. The drive took twice as long as usual, ice on the roads. Wind blowing snow across the highway and white curtains that made it hard to see 50 feet ahead. But we made it, stocked up on food. Propane for the camp stove. Coffee. Basics. At the grocery store, the cashier said, "You boys staying warm out there?" I said, "Barely." She said this cold is biblical, supposed to break next week. I said, "We'll believe it when we see it." She said, "You're the ones bought the Peterson place, right?" I said, "That's us." She said, "You're tougher than you look. Most people would have quit by now." I said, "We're too stubborn to quit." She laughed, said stubborn is a survival trait out here. Driving back, Danny said, "Do you think we're crazy, staying out here, freezing our asses off, working ourselves to death?" I said, "Probably." He said, "But you're not leaving." I said, "No." "Are you?" He said, "No." I said, "Then we're crazy together." He said, "Good. Crazy alone is just sad, crazy together is adventure." Entry 4, January 25th. The cold broke. Temperature got up to 15 above today, felt like summer. Danny and I worked outside without our heavy coats, just flannel and vests. 15 degrees and we're celebrating. That's what 3 weeks of sub-zero does to you. Changes your perspective. Makes you grateful for things you used to hate. We spent the day cutting firewood, restocking what we burned. The chainsaw ran smooth. The wood split clean. By evening we had another cord and a half stacked, still behind where we should be but catching up. The sun stayed out all day. First blue sky in weeks. I stood there in the woods watching light filter through bare cottonwood branches and felt something like hope. Walt drove over in the afternoon. First time I'd seen him in 2 weeks. He looked bad, thinner, moving slower. I asked if he's okay. He said, "I'm tired, that's all, just tired." I said, "You need to see a doctor." He said, "I see doctors all the time. They tell me the same thing. Slow down, rest, take it easy." I said, "Maybe you should listen." He said, "When I'm dead, I'll rest. Until then, I've got things to do." He stayed for coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and we talked about spring, about wheat, about what needs doing when the ground thaws. He said, "You'll want to fertilize the wheat in March. Give it a boost before it starts growing heavy." I said, "I don't have a fertilizer spreader." He said, "I do. You can borrow it." I said, "I'm starting to owe you more than I can repay." He said, "You don't owe me anything. You're keeping this valley alive. That's payment enough." Entry 5, February 1st. February, 1 month closer to spring. 1 month closer to knowing if the winter wheat survived. The snow is 3 feet deep in the fields. Under that snow, 80 acres of wheat are either alive or dead. I won't know until the snow melts. Won't know if I gambled right or threw away $1,400 on seed that froze. Danny has been working on equipment, servicing the Farmall, rebuilding the carburetor, adjusting valves, replacing worn parts. He's methodical, patient, better with machinery than I am. He says the Farmall will be ready when we need her. Says she's got years left if we take care of her. I said, "How many years?" He said, "As many as we give her." We're a good team. He does the technical work. I do the heavy lifting. Together we keep things running, keep things moving forward. He's 28 years old and choosing to spend his weekends on a failing farm with his father. I don't know what I did to deserve that. Don't know what changed between us. But I'm grateful for it. Grateful every day. Entry 6, February 8th. Linda called today, my ex-wife. First time we've talked since the divorce finalized. She said she heard I'm farming. Heard Danny moved out there with me. Wanted to know if we're okay. I said we're surviving. She said Danny seems happier. I talk to him sometimes. He talks about the farm, about fixing tractors, about building things. She said he never talked like that when he was in Billings. I said this place gives him purpose. She said it gives both of you purpose. Then she said, "I'm glad you found something, Rob. I was worried after the divorce. Worried you'd fall apart." I said, "I almost did." She said, "But you didn't. That's good. That's really good." We talked for 20 minutes, cordial, almost friendly. The anger is gone. The resentment. What's left is 2 people who used to love each other acknowledging that maybe the ending was right, that maybe we both needed to find different lives. Hers in Billings with a new boyfriend. Mine on a farm with our son and a tractor that refuses to die. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about the past year, how much has changed, how much I've changed. A year ago, I would have been angry at her for calling, would have felt defensive, wounded. Now I just feel grateful, grateful she let me go, grateful I found this place, Grateful for the cold and the work and the struggle that's making me into someone I can respect. Entry 7, February 14th. Valentine's Day. I'm 52 years old and I spent it alone in a farmhouse splitting firewood. Danny is in Billings for the week, working, making money. I'm here by myself for the first time in months. The silence is overwhelming, not bad, just big. The wind, the wood stove crackling, my own breathing, nothing else. I walked out to the machine shed tonight, uncovered the Farmall, climbed up and sat in the seat. The metal cold enough to burn through my jeans. I sat there in the dark looking at the controls. The steering wheel worn smooth by 72 years of hands, the gauges cracked and faded, the paint mostly rust, but solid, real. A machine that's outlived most of the men who drove her. I thought about all the farmers who sat in the seat, all the fields they plowed, all the springs they saw, all the winters they survived. I'm just the latest in a long line of stubborn men trying to make a living from hard ground. Most of them probably failed, probably lost money, probably wondered what the hell they were doing. But they kept going, kept planting, kept hoping. And here I am doing the same thing, hoping the same hopes, fighting the same fights. Entry 8, February 20th. 6 weeks until spring. The days are getting longer, sun rising earlier, setting later, temperature still below freezing most days, but the trend is up. The coldest part of winter is behind us. We survived, barely, but survived. I've been calculating finances. Money in the bank is down to $2,000. That has to last until wheat harvest in July, 5 months. I need income. Walt suggested I sell firewood commercially, put ads in the regional papers, deliver to towns within 50 miles. I said that's a lot of driving. He said it's a lot of money. Firewood sells for $200 a cord delivered. If you can sell 20 cords, that's $4,000. I said I don't have 20 cords cut. He said then, you better start cutting. Danny came back Friday. We spent the weekend in the woods, cutting, splitting, stacking. My hands are destroyed, blisters on top of blisters, but we cut 3 cords, 17 more to go. If we can do 3 cords a weekend, we'll have enough by mid-April. That's when people start buying firewood for next winter, planning ahead, being smart, unlike me who's cutting it as fast as I can burn it. Entry 9, February 28th. End of February, 10 months since I bought this place. Feels like 10 years, feels like yesterday. Time moves different out here, slower in some ways, faster in others. The seasons mark progress, not weeks or months. Winter to spring to summer to fall. That's the rhythm, that's the clock. Danny and I were sitting by the wood stove tonight and he said, "Dad, do you regret it, buying this place?" I said, "Some days." He said, "Which days?" I said, "The days when it's 30 below and I'm wondering if I'll freeze. The days when the money runs out and I don't know how I'll eat. The days when I feel like I'm drowning." He said, "What about the other days?" I said, "The other days I feel like I'm building something that matters." He said, "Me too." Entry 10, March 5th. March, the month when winter starts losing its grip. The snow is melting in the south-facing slopes, bare ground showing through for the first time in 4 months. The wheat fields are still buried, but the edges are clearing. Another few weeks and we'll know. We'll see green or we'll see nothing. We'll know if the gamble paid off or if I wasted a year. Walt came by today. I hadn't seen him in 2 weeks. He looked worse. Much worse. Face gaunt, hands shaking, moving like everything hurts. I said, "Walt, you need to go to the hospital." He said, "I'm fine." I said, "You're not fine." He said, "Fine, I'm dying. But I'm not going to spend my last months in a hospital bed. I'm going to spend them here, on my land, watching spring come." That stopped me cold. I said, "What do you mean dying?" He said, "The heart condition. It's terminal, has been for a year. Doctor gives me 6 months, maybe less." I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" He said, "Because I didn't want you treating me like I'm dying. I wanted you treating me like I'm living. There's a difference." I didn't know what to say, just stood there looking at this man who became my friend. My mentor, my family, he said, "Don't look at me like that. I'm not dead yet. I've got things to teach you still." I said, "Okay. What do you need me to do?" He said, "Keep farming, keep learning, keep this valley alive after I'm gone. That's all I need." Entry 11, March 12th. The snow is melting fast now. Temperature in the 40s during the day, 30s at night. The fields are emerging, muddy, waterlogged, but emerging. And in the wheat field I can see green, tiny shoots of winter wheat coming back to life. The crop survived. 80 acres of wheat made it through the coldest winter in 20 years. I walked the field yesterday, boots sinking in mud, looking at those green shoots and feeling something I haven't felt in months. Relief, hope, validation. I bet everything on this crop and it survived. It's not harvested yet. 1,000 things can still go wrong, but it's alive. That's enough for now. Danny was with me. We stood at the edge of the field looking at 80 acres of green against brown mud. He said we did it. I said we haven't done anything yet. He said we kept it alive through winter. That's something. I said, yeah, that's something. Entry 12, March 18th. 1 year since I signed the divorce papers. 1 year since I got that check for $44,000 and didn't know what to do with my life. I'm sitting on the porch of a farmhouse I own looking at wheat fields that survived winter. My son is in the barn working on a tractor that runs because we fixed her together. My neighbor who became family is dying but still teaching me. And I'm here, still standing, still farming, still becoming whoever I'm supposed to be. The money is almost gone, $1,500 left in the bank, but I've got 20 cords of firewood cut, got ads running in 3 newspapers, got orders coming in. The firewood business is working. I've sold 12 cords already, $2,400. That'll carry me to harvest. Walt stopped by tonight, brought whiskey, said we're celebrating. I said, celebrating what? He said, you. 1 year you made it. I said, barely. He said, barely counts. We sat on the porch drinking cheap whiskey straight from the bottle, 2 men watching the sun set over land we love. He said, I'm proud of you, Rob. I said, for what? He said, for not quitting, for bringing Danny back, for keeping this valley farming, for giving me something to care about in my last months. I said, you've given me more than I can ever repay. He said, then we're even. Entry 13, March 25th. Spring is here for real now. The snow is gone except in the deepest shadows. The wheat is growing, 6 inches tall, thick and even, beautiful in a way I never understood before. 80 acres of green against brown earth and blue sky. Life returning, promises being kept. Walt said it's time to fertilize. The wheat needs nitrogen to grow strong, to produce heavy heads, to give us the yield we need. He loaned me his fertilizer spreader, old piece of equipment but functional. We filled it with urea. White pellets that smell like ammonia. Cost me $600 for enough to cover 80 acres. Money I barely have, but money I have to spend to make money. Danny and I spent 2 days spreading fertilizer, the Farmall pulling the spreader, the spinner broadcasting pellets across the field. By the time we finished, the whole crop was fertilized. Now we wait for the fertilizer to dissolve, wait for the wheat to absorb it, wait for the stalks to thicken and the heads to form, always waiting. That's farming. 90% waiting, 10% panic. Entry 14, April 1st. April Fool's Day, the joke's on me. The firewood business dried up. People bought their wood for next winter and now they're done. I've got 8 cords left and no buyers. 8 cords is $1,600 sitting in my woodpile going nowhere. I need that money, need it to survive until harvest. I called the newspaper, dropped the ads. No point paying for advertising that doesn't work. I'll try again in the fall. For now, I've got $1,100 in the bank in 3 months until wheat harvest. The math doesn't work. Even if I spend nothing, I'll run out of money in 2 months. Danny said he can help, said he's got some savings. I said no. He said, Dad, don't be stubborn. I said I'm not being stubborn, I'm being realistic. This is my farm, my risk, my problem. He said it's our farm, our risk, our problem. We're in this together. I said I can't take your money. He said you're not taking it, I'm investing it. Big difference. We argued about it for an hour. Finally agreed he can put in $1,000. He becomes a partner, 25% equity. If the farm succeeds, he gets 25%. If it fails, he loses $1,000. He said deal. We shook hands. My son is now my business partner. I don't know if that's smart or crazy. Probably both. Entry 15, April 10th. Walt had another episode today. His heart. I was at his place helping him sort through equipment he wants to sell. He collapsed, just dropped like someone cut his strings. I called 911. Ambulance took 40 minutes to get there from Circle. 40 minutes of me trying to keep him conscious, trying to keep him breathing. The longest 40 minutes of my life. They took him to the hospital in Glasgow. I followed in my truck. Danny met me there. We sat in the waiting room for 6 hours while doctors worked on him. Finally, a doctor came out. Said Walt had a major cardiac event. Said they stabilized him, but he's critical. Said the next 48 hours will tell us if he makes it. I asked if I could see him. The doctor said family only. I said I'm all the family he has. The doctor looked at me, looked at Danny, said okay, 5 minutes. We went in. Walt was unconscious, tubes and wires everywhere, monitors beeping. He looked small, fragile, nothing like the man who taught me to farm. I stood next to his bed and said, Walt, if you can hear me, you need to fight. You need to stay. I'm not done learning yet. Danny said we need you. The farm needs you. I don't know if he heard us. Don't know if it matters, but I had to say it. Had to tell him he matters. Entry 16, April 12th. Walt died this morning, 4:30 a.m. I got the call from the hospital. They said he went peacefully, in his sleep. No pain. I said thank you for calling, hung up. Sat in the dark of my bedroom and cried for the first time since Marie died. Cried for Walt, for Marie, for the unfairness of good people dying while the world keeps turning. Danny drove up from Billings when I called him, got here by 8. We sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee and not talking. What is there to say? Walt is gone, the man who saved me, who taught me, who gave me purpose and knowledge and friendship when I needed it most. Gone. He has a son in Seattle who hasn't talked to him in 5 years. I called him, told him his father died. He said thanks for letting me know. I'll make arrangements. I said your father was a good man. He said I'm sure he was. Then he hung up. That's it. 70 years of life reduced to I'm sure he was. I'm handling the funeral. Danny and Walt left instructions. Cremation. No service. Scatter his ashes on his farm. He said in the instructions I want to stay on the land. That's where Marie is. That's where I belong, so we'll do it. We'll give him what he wanted. Entry 17, April 15th. We scattered Walt's ashes today. Danny and I on the hill behind his house where he used to sit with Marie and watch sunsets. We didn't say much. Didn't need to. Just opened the urn and let the wind take him. Let him spread across the land he loved. Let him go. Standing there on that hill, I thought about everything Walt taught me. About farming and tractors and patience and stubborn hope. About not quitting when things get hard. About community and chosen family and what it means to leave something behind that matters. He left this valley better than he found it. Left me better than he found me. That's a life well lived. His son is selling the farm, putting it on the market next week. I asked if I could buy it. He said how much you got. I said not enough. He said then no, I'm taking the highest offer. I said your father wanted this land to stay farmland. He said my father wanted a lot of things. Doesn't mean he got them. The conversation ended there. Entry 18, April 20th. Spring work is here. The wheat is growing fast, a foot tall now, thick and green. It needs nothing from me except hope. Hope for rain at the right times, hope for no hail, hope for good weather at harvest. I'm getting good at hope. Been practicing for a year. Danny and I planted the hay fields, 40 acres again. Same mix as last year, alfalfa and timothy. The Farmall pulled the drill smooth. No problems, the crop is in the ground. Now we wait. Wait for germination, wait for growth, wait for cutting season, more waiting. The firewood finally sold, all 8 cords. A rancher bought them for his hired hands. $1,600 cash. That plus Danny's investment puts me at $3,700 in the bank, enough to make it to harvest. Barely, but enough. Entry 19, May 1st. May Day, the month of growth, everything is green now. The wheat, the hay, the grass in the pastures, the trees along the creek. After 6 months of brown and white, the world has color again. The world has life. I've been thinking about Walt a lot, about what he said before he died, about keeping the valley alive, about not giving up. I'm trying to honor what he taught me, trying to be the farmer he believed I could be. Danny said we should buy Walt's farm. I said we don't have the money. He said we could get a loan. I said no bank will loan to a farmer in his first year. He said then we find another way. I said there is no other way. He said there's always another way. We just haven't thought of it yet. Entry 20, May 15th. The wheat is 2 feet tall, heading out, the heads forming. This is the critical stage, the stage where yield is determined. Each head will hold 20 to 40 seeds. 80 acres times however many plants per acre times however many seeds per head. The math is complicated, but the concept is simple. More seeds mean more money. Fewer seeds mean failure. I walk the field every morning, looking for disease, looking for insects, looking for anything wrong. So far it's perfect. The crop is perfect. Weather has been ideal. Warm days, cool nights, enough rain but not too much. If this holds, we'll have a good harvest, maybe a great harvest. But I've learned not to count on anything. Learned that weather can change. That hail can destroy a crop in minutes. That farming is always one disaster away from ruin. So I look at that beautiful wheat and I'm grateful. But I don't celebrate yet. Not until the grain is in the bin and the check is cashed. Entry 21, May 28th. Linda called again, said Danny told her about Walt, said she's sorry. Walt was a good man. I said he was the best. She said, how are you doing? I said, I'm surviving. She said, that's what you always say. I said, because it's always true. She said, Danny says you're buying Walt's farm. I said, Danny's optimistic. We can't afford it. She said, maybe I can help. That surprised me. I said, what do you mean? She said, I've got some money saved. 10,000, you can have it. I said, I can't take your money. She said, it's not for you. It's for Danny. He's happy there, happier than I've ever seen him. If buying that farm keeps him happy, then I want to help. I said, I don't know what to say. She said, say you'll think about it. After we hung up, I sat there stunned. My ex-wife offering to help buy a farm. The woman I divorced. The woman who got the house and moved on with her life. Offering $10,000 to help me and Danny. I don't understand it. Don't understand why she'd do that. But I'm grateful. Grateful for grace I don't deserve. Entry 22, June 5th. Danny and I drove to the bank today. Sat down with a loan officer. Explained we want to buy Walt's farm. 180 acres. Listed at $120,000. We have $10,000 from Linda. $1,000 from me. $1,000 from Danny. $12,000 total. We need a loan for $108,000. The loan officer looked at our financials, looked at my 1 year of farming, looked at Danny's electrician income, said, I can't approve this. You don't have the credit, don't have the history, don't have the collateral. I said the land is the collateral. He said land only has value if you can make it produce. You've been farming 1 year. That's not enough history. We left the bank defeated, drove home in silence. That night Danny said we're not giving up. I said I think we have to. He said no. Walt didn't give up. You didn't give up. I'm not giving up. There has to be another way. Entry 23, June 15th. The wheat is almost ready. Another 3 weeks and we'll harvest. The heads are heavy, full of grain. I walked the field today and pulled a few heads. Rubbed the seeds between my fingers. They're still soft, still green, but forming. Getting harder every day, getting closer to ready. I've been talking to the grain elevator. Getting prices. Current price for winter wheat is $6.20 a bushel. If I get 40 bushels per acre, that's 80 acres times 40 bushels times 620. $19,840 gross. Subtract seed cost and fertilizer and fuel and custom cutting. Net maybe $12,000. Maybe more if yield is good and prices hold. $12,000. That's what a year of farming is worth if everything goes right. $12,000 minus living expenses. $12,000 minus equipment repairs. $12,000 minus all the things I can't predict. It's not much, but it's more than I had, more than I hoped for. It's survival. Entry 24, June 25th. A miracle happened today, or maybe not a miracle. Maybe just Walt taking care of us from wherever he is. His son called, said he's been thinking, said his father talked about me in the months before he died, said I was the son he wished he had, the son who cared about the land, who would keep it farming. He said I'm selling the farm to developers. They offered $130,000, but before I sign I wanted to give you a chance. I'll sell it to you for $120,000, but here's the deal. I'll carry the contract. You put down $20,000. Pay me $800 a month for 15 years. No interest. If you miss 3 payments, the farm reverts to me and I sell it to the developers. I said, why would you do that? He said, because my father would want me to. Because even though we didn't get along, I respected what he stood for. Because keeping family land and farming is the right thing to do even if it's not the profitable thing. I said I'll take it. We shook hands over the phone. Papers will be ready in 2 weeks. I called Danny, called Linda, told them we're buying Walt's farm. 180 acres to add to my 160. 340 acres total. We're not a hobby anymore. We're a real operation. Entry 25, June 30th. End of June. Wheat harvest starts in 2 weeks. I'm ready, equipment serviced, trucks lined up, custom cutter scheduled, everything in place. This is what the whole year has been building toward. This is the moment that determines if I survive or fail. Danny moved into Walt's house. His house now, our house. He's fixing it up, making it home. We'll run the 2 farms as one operation. Carlson Keller Farm, honoring Walt, honoring what we're building together. I walked out to the machine shed tonight, uncovered the Farmall, started her up for the first time in months. She fired right away, ran smooth, ready for hay season. I sat in that seat listening to the engine and thought about the past 15 months, thought about the divorce and the desperation and the gamble that brought me here. Thought about Walt teaching me everything, about Danny coming back, about Linda helping from a distance, about a tractor that refused to die and a crop that survived winter and a stubborn man who didn't know when to quit. My name is Robert Keller. I'm 52 years old. I survived the coldest winter in 20 years. I survived losing my mentor and friend. I survived doubt and fear and nearly freezing and running out of money. I survived because I had no choice, because quitting wasn't an option, because the Farmall kept running and the wheat kept growing and my son kept believing. Now we're here, standing on the edge of harvest, standing on the edge of knowing if this works. The cold is over, spring came, summer is here, and I'm still standing, still farming, still hoping. That's enough, that's everything. Entry 1, July 3rd, 2024. 3 days until wheat harvest. The crop is ready. I walked the field this morning and the heads are golden, fully mature. Seeds hard when you bite them, that's the test. If the seed cracks between your teeth, it's ready. If it mushes, it needs more time. Every seed I tested cracked clean. The wheat is ready. I'm not sure I am. The combine operator is scheduled for July 6th. Weather forecast is clear. No rain, no wind, perfect harvest conditions. I've arranged trucks to haul grain to the elevator in circle, lined up help for the grain cart. Everything is ready except my nerves. Everything I've worked for comes down to the next week. A year and a half of work, $20,000 invested, 80 acres that will either save me or break me. Danny came over tonight. We sat on the porch drinking coffee and watching the wheat field turn gold in the evening light. He said, "You ready for this?" I said no. He said, "Me neither, but we're doing it anyway." I said, "That's all farming is. Doing things you're not ready for and hoping they work out." He said, "Sounds like life." I said, "It is life." Entry 2, July 6th. Harvest Day. The combine rolled into the field at 7 this morning. A John Deere S780, 40-foot header, can cut 15 acres an hour in good conditions. The operator's name is Frank. He's been running combines for 30 years. He said, "Your wheat looks good. Should yield 40 to 45 bushels an acre." I said, "That's what I'm hoping for." He said, "Hope's got nothing to do with it. The crop is what the crop is. We just cut it and count it." He started on the east edge. The header came down. The reel began spinning. Wheat stalks fed into the machine. The combine roared. Grain poured into the hopper. I followed in the grain cart, a borrowed wagon that holds 300 bushels. When Frank's hopper filled, he extended the auger and dumped into my cart while still cutting. Never stopped, never slowed, just kept cutting and dumping and cutting. By noon, we'd harvested 20 acres. The cart was making runs to my truck. I was hauling to the elevator, back and forth. The rhythm was brutal. No breaks, no rest. Just cut and haul and dump and return. This is harvest. This is what a year of work looks like. 12 hours of chaos and dust and noise. By evening, we'd finished 40 acres, half the field. Frank shut down at 8 when the dew started, said, "We'll finish tomorrow." I asked, "How's the yield?" He said, "Good, real good. You're running 42 bushels average so far. That's excellent for first-year wheat." I said, "What's that worth?" He said, "You'll know when you sell it." Entry 3, July 7th. Day 2 of harvest. We finished the last 40 acres by 2 in the afternoon. Total yield came in at 43 bushels per acre average. 80 acres times 43 equals 3,440 bushels. Current price at the elevator is $6.30 per bushel. 3,440 times 630 equals $21,672 gross. I stood at the elevator office while they weighed the last load, watched the scale tick up, watched the numbers appear on the screen. $21,672, more money than I've ever made in one harvest, more money than I made in 6 months of construction work. The clerk printed the receipt, handed it to me, said, "Good crop." I said, "Thank you." She said, "You're the one bought the Peterson place." I said, "That's right." She said, "You're making it work." I said, "Trying to." I drove home with that receipt in my pocket. $21,672. Subtract $1,400 for seed. Subtract $600 for fertilizer. Subtract $2,800 for custom cutting. Subtract $800 for fuel and miscellaneous. Net profit $15,772. $15,000 from 80 acres, from one crop, from a gamble I almost didn't take. Entry 4, July 10th. The check cleared. $15,772 deposited in the farm account. I transferred $800 to pay Walt's son for the first month on the land contract. Transferred $5,000 to savings. Kept the rest for operating expenses. For the first time in my life, I have a savings account with real money in it. $5,000 that nobody can take, that I earned with my hands and a tractor and a field of wheat. Danny and I went to dinner in circle. First time eating at a restaurant since I bought the farm. We ordered steaks. Real steaks, not the cheap cuts I've been buying at the grocery store. We sat there eating good meat and drinking beer, and neither of us said much. Didn't need to. The harvest said everything. We did it. We made it work. We're farmers now. Real farmers. The waitress came by and said, "You boys celebrating?" I said, "We are." She said, "What's the occasion?" I said, "First wheat harvest." She said, "You're the ones working the Peterson place." I said, "In the Carlson place now." She said, "Walt would be proud." That stopped me. I said, "You knew Walt?" She said, "Everyone knew Walt. Good man. Loved that land." She said, "He talked about you before he died. Said you reminded him why farming matters." I said, "I hope I can live up to that." She said, "You already are." Entry 5, July 18th. Hay cutting started yesterday. First cutting on both farms. 80 acres total, 40 on my place, 40 on Walt's place. Danny ran one tractor. I ran the Farmall. We cut all day. The smell of fresh alfalfa filling the air. The sound of sickle bars cutting through stems. The rhythm of work that's become familiar. We raked it today. Let it dry 3 days in the sun. Tomorrow we bale. I rented the same baler as last year. $300 for the week. Next year I'll buy one. This year I'm still being careful with money. Still remembering what it feels like to have $1,500 and wonder if you'll survive. The wheat stubble is still standing in the other field. 80 acres of golden straw. I'll bale it too. Sell it for cattle bedding. Not much money, but every dollar counts. Every dollar is another month of survival, another payment to Walt's son, another step toward owning this land outright. Entry 6, July 20th. Baling day. We started at dawn. The Farmall pulled the baler across 40 acres, then across another 40. By evening we had 650 bales, more than double last year. Better stand, better management, better everything. We stacked them in both barns, the old barn on my place creaking under the weight, the barn on Walt's place solid and straight. Between the two barns we've got enough hay to feed a small cattle herd through winter, or enough to sell for $4,000. Frank stopped by in the afternoon. The combine operator said he heard I bought the Carlson place. Said he's got some advice if I want it. I said I'll take all the advice I can get. He said don't overextend. Lots of farmers buy land they can't afford, stretch themselves thin. One bad year and they're done. He said you've got a good thing going, keep it simple, keep it sustainable. Don't bet everything on the next gamble. I said I appreciate that. He said I've seen too many good farmers go broke trying to get big too fast. You're doing it right, slow and steady. Building equity, building knowledge, that's how you last. I said how long you been farming. He said 40 years. I said you going to keep going. He said until I can't. That's all any of us can do. Entry 7, July 28th. Danny and I have been working on equipment, servicing everything before it breaks. The Farmall got a full overhaul, new injectors, new fuel pump, valve adjustment, oil change, grease on every fitting. She runs better than ever now, smooth, quiet, strong. Danny said she's got another 20 years in her easy. I said that'll outlive me. He said then we keep her running for whoever comes next. We're building something here, something that lasts beyond us. The land will be here long after we're gone. The equipment will run for whoever maintains it. The knowledge we're learning will pass to the next generation. That's what Walt understood. That's what he tried to teach me. You're not farming for yourself. You're farming for everyone who comes after. Entry 8, August 5th. Second cutting is coming up in 3 weeks. The hay grew back thick, better than first cutting. Danny suggested we add cattle, buy some cow-calf pairs, graze them on the pasture, feed them our hay through winter, sell the calves in spring. Add another revenue stream. I said we don't know anything about cattle. He said we didn't know anything about wheat either. We learned. I said cattle are different. He said everything's different until you learn it. I've been thinking about it. We've got 100 acres of pasture between the two farms. That could support 30 cow-calf pairs easy. Buy them in fall for $1,800 each. That's $54,000, money I don't have, but I could finance it through the Livestock Credit Association. Put down 20%, finance the rest. If we sell the calves for $1,000 each next spring, that's $30,000 gross. Subtract feed and vet costs and loan payment. Maybe net $8,000. Not much, but it's diversification. It's spreading risk. Entry 9, August 15th. I met with the livestock credit officer today, explained my plan. He looked at my financials, 1 year of profitable farming, 15,000 net from wheat, 4,000 from hay, clear title to 160 acres, land contract on another 180. He said I can approve 20,000 at 7%. That'll buy you about 11 cow-calf pairs, not 30, but 11 is a start. I said I'll take it. He said, you sure about this? Adding cattle is a whole different business. I said I'm sure I need to diversify. He said fair enough. Papers will be ready next week. I called Danny, told him. He said 11 is better than none. I said it's also 11 more things that can go wrong. He said, or 11 more things that can go right. I said, when did you become an optimist? He said, when I started farming with you. Entry 10, August 25th. Second cutting finished. 700 bales. Combined with first cutting, we've got 1,350 bales total. I'm keeping 300 for the cattle, selling the rest. At $6 a bale, that's $6,300. Added to wheat profit and first hay cutting, I've grossed $25,000 this year. Net after all expenses, maybe $18,000. That's real money. That's a living. Danny drew his first paycheck today. 25% of net profit, $4,500. He looked at the check like it wasn't real, said, I've never made this much for 4 months' work. I said, you earned it. He said, we earned it. I said, yeah, we did. We deposited his check, paid ourselves salaries, put the rest in the operating account. The account that pays for fuel and parts and fees and the 1,000 things farming costs. For the first time, I'm not worried about running out of money. For the first time, I can see a year ahead and know I'll survive it. Entry 11, September 10th. Bought the cattle today. 11 cow-calf pairs from a rancher liquidating his herd. Black Angus, good stock. The cows are bred to calve in March. The calves at their side now will sell in October. That's immediate income, plus the new calves next spring. Danny and I loaded them in a borrowed trailer, hauled them home, turned them out on pasture that hasn't seen cattle in a decade. They spread out across the grass, grazing, mothers watching over calves. It's a good sight. Livestock on land that was empty, life where there was vacancy. Walt would approve. He ran cattle for 40 years. Now his land has them again. Now the circle is complete. I walked the fence line tonight, checking for weak spots, places cattle might push through. Found 3 bad sections. Danny and I will fix them this weekend. That's farming, constant maintenance, constant vigilance. The work never stops, but I don't mind anymore. The work is the point. The work is what makes it real. Entry 12, September 20th. Fall is here, temperature dropping at night, leaves turning on the cottonwoods along the creek. The cattle are fattening on grass before winter. The hay is stacked and ready. The equipment is serviced and stored. Everything is prepared for the cold that's coming. I've been calculating next year. If I plant 160 acres of wheat across both farms, if I get the same yield and price, that's $80,000 gross, $30,000 net after expenses. Add hay sales, add cattle sales, total maybe $45,000 gross, $25,000 net. Split with Danny, that's $18,000 for me, $12,000 for him since he's got smaller equity. That's a living wage. That's sustainable. But that's if everything goes right, if weather cooperates, if prices hold, if equipment doesn't break, if cattle don't get sick, if 1,000 things don't go wrong. Farming is always if, always uncertainty, Always gambling on things you can't control. You just do the work and hope the odds favor you more years than they don't. Entry 13, October 1st. Sold the first set of calves today. 11 calves that came with the cows. Averaged 500 pounds each. Got $1.30 a pound. $7,150 gross. Subtract $2,000 for the cattle loan payment. Net $5,150. Not bad for 2 months of owning cattle. The cows are settled in. They know the pasture now, know where the water is, know where to shelter when wind blows. They're part of the farm now, part of the ecosystem we're building. Crops and cattle and land all working together. That's how the old-timers did it. That's how it's supposed to work. Entry 14, October 15th. Winter wheat planting started today. 160 acres across both farms, double last year. We're running 2 drills, 2 tractors, me on the Farmall, Danny on Walt's John Deere. The old and the older working side by side, dropping seed into soil that's already cooling, already preparing for winter. The seed cost $2,800 on credit, due at next harvest. The fertilizer will cost another $1,200 in spring. Total $4,000 invested before we see a return. But the return should be $30,000 if yield matches this year. That's a good ratio. That's worth the risk. Frank stopped by while we were planting, watched us work for a while, said you boys have got a system. I said we're learning. He said you've learned fast. Most first-year farmers are still figuring out which end of the tractor is front. You're running a real operation here. I said we had a good teacher. He said Walt. I said yeah, Walt. He said Walt was the best. He'd be proud of what you're doing. Entry 15, October 28th. Jessica came to visit. My daughter, 30 years old now, lives in Seattle, works as a nurse at Swedish Medical Center. First time since I bought the farm. She drove from Seattle, said she wanted to see what I've been doing, wanted to meet Danny, wanted to understand why we're out here freezing our asses off when we could have normal jobs in normal places. I gave her the tour, showed her the wheat stubble, the hay fields, the cattle, the equipment, the house that's slowly becoming a home. She walked through it all, taking pictures, asking questions. At the end she said, "Dad, this is actually impressive." I said, "You sound surprised." She said, "I am. When you bought this place I thought you'd lost your mind." She said, "But you're making it work. You and Danny, you're actually making it work." We had dinner together, the 3 of us. She asked Danny why he left Billings. He said, "Because this is real." She said, "What does that mean?" He said, "In the city I fixed other people's problems. Out here I'm building something that's mine." She said, "Is it worth it? The isolation, the hard work?" He said, "Every day." She looked at me, said, "You two are crazy." I said, "Probably." She said, "But you're happy." I thought about that, said, "I'm not sure happy is the word. Satisfied maybe. Purposeful, alive." She said, "That's better than happy." Entry 16, November 10th. The wheat germinated. Green shoots across 160 acres. The crop is up. Now it grows until freeze, goes dormant until spring. Survives or doesn't. Same gamble as last year but bigger. Twice the acreage. Twice the investment. Twice the risk. But I'm less scared this year. I know what to expect. Know what winter looks like. Know what spring requires. Know that if I do the work and don't cut corners, the crop has a chance. That's all farming is. Giving your crops a chance. The rest is up to weather and luck and forces beyond control. Danny and I have been cutting firewood, building the stockpile before deep cold hits. We're up to 12 cords already, enough for both houses through winter. We're not scrambling this year, not desperate, not wondering if we'll freeze. We're prepared. That's the difference a year makes. Knowledge, experience, confidence. Entry 17, November 25th. Thanksgiving. Danny and I drove to Billings, had dinner with Linda and her boyfriend. It was strange, sitting at a table with my ex-wife and my son and a man I don't know. But it was good too, civil, almost friendly. Linda asked how the farm is going. I told her about the harvest, about the cattle, about buying Walt's land. She said, I'm glad it's working out. The money I gave you, I'm glad it helped. I said it saved us. She said, good, that's what I wanted. Her boyfriend asked if farming is sustainable. I said, I don't know. Ask me in 5 years. He said, what if you have a bad year? I said, then we figure it out. That's what farmers do. He said, seems risky. I said, it is. But so is everything worth doing. He didn't have an answer for that. Driving back, Danny said that was weird. I said, which part? He said, all of it. Mom happy, you happy, everyone being normal. I said, maybe we're all just tired of being angry. He said, maybe. Or maybe farming beats the anger out of you, leaves no energy for grudges. I said, that's probably true. Entry 18, December 10th. First major snow, 8 inches overnight, temperature dropped to 0. Winter is here. The cattle huddled near the barn. We put out hay for them. They ate like they'd been starving. That's the thing about cattle. They always act like they're starving, but they're fat, healthy, ready for winter. The house is warm, the wood stove cranking out heat. The insulation we added last year making all the difference. I'm comfortable this winter. Not just surviving, but actually comfortable. That's progress. That's success in a way money can't measure. I've been reading Walt's old farming journals. Found them in his house when we were cleaning. 50 years of notes, planting dates, rainfall totals, yields, expenses. His whole farming life documented in spiral notebooks. Reading them is like talking to him, like he's still here teaching me. Entry from 1985. Harsh winter. Lost 12 calves to cold. Weather is the enemy and the employer. You can't control it, can only prepare for it and endure it. That's still true. Nothing's changed in 40 years. Weather is still the boss. We're still just trying to survive it. Entry 19, December 20th. Sold the rest of the hay, 750 bales. Local rancher bought them all, $4,500. That plus the first cutting sales and the calf sales puts us at $16,000 in additional income beyond wheat. Total gross revenue for year 1, $41,000. Net after expenses, $24,000. Split with Danny, $18,000 for me, $6,000 for him based on equity percentage. $18,000. That's what I made my first full year farming. It's not construction money, not city money, but it's honest money, earned money, mine. I paid myself a salary of $12,000, put $6,000 in savings. The savings account now has $11,000. More money than I've ever had saved. More security than I've ever felt. Entry 20, December 31st. New Year's Eve, 2 years since the divorce. I'm sitting in a house I own, on land I'm buying, with cattle in the pasture and wheat in the ground and a son who chose to be here. 2 years ago I was broken, lost, desperate. Today I'm whole, found, purposeful. Danny came over tonight. We sat by the fire drinking whiskey Walt left behind. Good whiskey, expensive whiskey. The kind you save for special occasions. Danny said, what are we toasting? I said, survival. He said, that's dark. I said, that's honest. He said, okay, to survival. We drank. He said, what do you think next year looks like? I said, I think it looks like more of this. More work, more risk, more hoping things work out. He said, sounds exhausting. I said, it is. He said, you going to keep doing it? I said, until I can't. He said, me too. We sat there in silence for a while, just 2 men and a fire and a future that's uncertain but possible. Finally, Danny said, Dad, I need to tell you something. I said, what? He said, I'm glad you bought this place. I'm glad you went crazy. I'm glad I followed you out here, because this, he gestured at the room, the farm, everything. This is the best thing I've ever done. I said, me too, son, me too. Entry 21. January 15th, 2025. New year, new goals. Danny and I made a list. Things we want to accomplish this year: fix the rest of the fence, buy our own baler, Add 10 more cow-calf pairs, paint the barn, build a proper shop, upgrade the Farmall's electrical system. The list goes on, always more work, always more to do. But that's good, that's what keeps you going, the work that's never finished, the improvements that are always possible, the belief that next year can be better than this year. That's hope, that's farming, that's life. Entry 22, February 10th. The cold is different this year. Still brutal, still relentless, but I'm not afraid of it. I know what to expect, know how to prepare. Know that spring always comes eventually. That's the thing about surviving one winter. It makes the next one less terrifying. The cattle are doing well. We're feeding hay every day. They're holding weight. The calves inside the cows are growing. In 6 weeks, they'll start dropping. In 8 weeks, we'll have 11 new calves, 11 more lives depending on us, 11 more reasons to keep going. Entry 23, March 1st. The snow is melting, earlier than last year. The wheat is emerging, green shoots across 160 acres. The stand looks good, thick, even no winter kill that I can see. The gamble paid off again. The crop survived. Now we nurse it through spring, fertilize it, watch it grow. Hope for rain at the right times, hope for no hail, always hoping. Danny said we should expand next year. Plant 200 acres. I said that's a lot. He said we can handle it. We've got the land, we've got the equipment, we've got the knowledge now. I said knowledge isn't enough. We need luck too. He said then we better keep being lucky. Entry 24, March 15th. 2 years since I signed the divorce papers. 2 years since I took $44,000 and bet it all on a broken farm and a dead tractor. I'm sitting here now with 340 acres, 11 cattle, equipment that runs, a son who's my partner, a bank account with money in it, a future that looks possible. The Farmall sits in the shed, waiting for spring work. 73 years old now, still running, still working, still refusing to quit, like me, like Danny, like everyone who bets on impossible things and somehow makes them real. Entry 25, March 30th. Spring work starts tomorrow, fertilizing the wheat, planting the hay, preparing for calving season. The cycle begins again. The same work as last year, the same hopes, the same fears, but I'm different, stronger, wiser, more certain that I can do this, that we can do this. Tonight I walked out to the wheat field, stood at the edge looking at 160 acres of green against brown earth, thought about Walt, about everything he taught me, about the legacy he left, about the responsibility I carry to keep it going. I said out loud, I'm doing my best, Walt, hope it's enough. The wind picked up, blowing across the field, making the wheat ripple like water, like the land was breathing, like Walt was answering, saying keep going, keep working, keep believing, that's all any of us can do. 2 years, $44,000, one old tractor, one son who came back, one mentor who taught me everything. That's what it took to get here. To this moment where I'm standing in a field I own, looking at a crop I planted, watching spring return. The work continues. The seasons turn, and I'm here, still farming, still building, still becoming. Entry 1, April 5th, 2025. 3 years ago today, I signed divorce papers in a lawyer's office that smelled like failure. Today, I'm standing in a wheat field watching 160 acres turn from winter gray to spring green. 3 years, $44,000, one broken tractor, one stubborn son, one dying mentor who taught me everything. That's what it took to get here, to this moment, to this life. The wheat is growing fast, 8 inches tall already. The warm April weather pushing it hard. It needs rain. We've a decent moisture this year, better than last. The forecast looks good. Steady spring rains predicted. No drought warnings, that's a relief. Last year taught me what drought can do. This year the sky is being generous. Entry 2, April 15th. Calving started. First calf born 2 nights ago. A heifer, black, healthy, 80 pounds. The cow cleaned her off and had her nursing within an hour. Textbook birth. 10 more to go. Danny and I are checking the herd every 4 hours, day and night. Looking for cows in labor, looking for problems. Most births go fine, some don't. You have to be there, you have to watch. Second calf came yesterday morning. Bull calf, 90 pounds, easy birth. Third calf came last night. Another heifer, but this one was breech, back feet first. The cow was struggling. Danny and I pulled the calf, used chains on the legs, pulled when she pushed. Got the calf out alive, but it was close. The cow is fine. The calf is fine. We're exhausted. This is the part of ranching nobody talks about. The sleepless nights, the anxiety, the moments when you're shoulder deep in a cow trying to save a calf worth maybe $1,000. You do it because that's the job, because those 11 cows depend on you, because quitting isn't an option once you start. Entry 3, April 25th. All 11 calves on the ground. 9 bulls, 2 heifers, all healthy, all nursing, total success. The cows are good mothers, attentive, protective. We turned them all out on pasture yesterday. Watching those cow-calf pairs spread across green grass, that's what farming is supposed to look like. That's the magazine photo, the calendar shot, the dream. The wheat is thriving. Rain came twice this week. 2 inches total, perfect timing. The crop is heading out now. The head's forming thick and full. This looks like a 40-bushel year if nothing goes wrong, if the weather holds, if hail doesn't come. That's always the fear in Montana. Not drought, hail. One storm can destroy a crop in 10 minutes, shred every head, turn a fortune into nothing. I walked the field this morning, pulled a plant, looked at the roots. They're strong, deep. The plant is healthy, fighting, thriving like me, like Danny, like everyone who refuses to quit, but thriving isn't safe. Thriving just means you have more to lose. Entry 4, May 1st. May Day, the wheat is 2 feet tall, heading out beautifully. The heads are full, thick, each head carrying 30 to 40 seeds. This is what perfect looks like. Perfect weather, perfect growth, perfect timing, everything clicking into place. And that terrifies me because I know how fast perfect can turn to disaster. Danny said maybe we should pray. I said to who? He said I don't know, whoever's in charge of not sending hail. I said if someone was in charge of hail we wouldn't need crop insurance. He said do we have crop insurance? I said no. Can't afford it. He said then we definitely should pray. The cattle are fine, the pasture is lush. We've got more grass than they can eat. The calves are growing fat, everything is working, everything is aligned. And I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's farming. Even when things go right, you're waiting for them to go wrong. Entry 5, May 10th. The rain continues, steady, gentle, soaking. The wheat loves it. Growing an inch a day it seems, 3 feet tall now, the heads mature and heavy. Frank stopped by yesterday, looked at the crop, said this is the best stand I've seen in 5 years. You're looking at 45 bushels easy, maybe 50 if it holds. I said what are the odds it holds? He said 50-50, weather's been too good, that worries me. I said me too. He said you watching the forecast? I said every day. He said watch for hail warnings. We're entering prime hail season. Late May through June, that's when the big storms come through. He said you get a warning you might have time to cut early, save some of it. I said cut it green. He said better green than destroyed. I said I'll watch. Entry 6, May 20th. The forecast changed. Severe thunderstorm watch for tomorrow, hail possible, large hail, the kind that destroys crops. The kind that turns a year of work into mulch. I've been watching the radar all day, watching the storms form in Wyoming, watching them track northeast, watching them head straight for us. Danny and I talked about cutting early. The wheat isn't quite ready. Another 2 weeks would be ideal, but Frank said green is better than gone. I called him, asked what he thinks. He said if the storm tracks through your area, cut tonight. Cut in the dark if you have to. Get something in the bin. I said our combine isn't set up for night cutting. He said then hope the storm misses you. I spent the evening walking the field, looking at 3 years of work standing in perfect rows. 160 acres of wheat worth $60,000, all of it vulnerable, all of it at the mercy of weather I can't control. That's farming, building something beautiful and betting it survives. Entry 7, May 21st. The storm came, 2 in the morning. I woke to thunder that shook the house. Lightning turning night to day, rain hammering the roof like gravel, and then the sound I'd been dreading, the sound of hail, not small hail, big hail, golf ball sized, smashing into everything. The roof, the windows, the ground. I ran outside in my boots and underwear, stood on the porch watching ice fall from the sky, watching it shred the wheat, every stalk beaten down, every head smashed open, seeds scattered on the ground. 3 years of work destroyed in 15 minutes. Danny came out, stood next to me. We didn't say anything, just watched. Watched the hail strip the field bare. Watched $60,000 disappear. Watched perfect turn to disaster. When it stopped, we walked into the field. The damage was total, every acre destroyed, not a single head intact. The wheat that was 3 feet tall and perfect was now flattened, broken, gone. Entry 8, May 22nd. I didn't sleep last night. Sat on the porch until dawn looking at the destroyed field, calculating. 160 acres times 0 bushels equals $0, minus 4,000 in seed and fertilizer and expenses. Net loss 4,000, plus the 800 monthly payment to Walt's son, plus living expenses. The math is brutal. I'm going to run out of money by September. Danny came over at sunrise, said we need to talk. I said I know. He said what do we do? I said I don't know. He said can we replant? I said too late. Growing season's over. He said can we plant something else? I said like what? He said I don't know, something, anything. I said there's nothing to plant. The field is done. We're done. He sat down next to me, said we're not done. We've got cattle. We've got hay ground. We've got the land contract. We're not done. I said we're 4,000 in the hole with no wheat income. He said then we figure it out. That's what we do. We figure it out. I said I'm tired of figuring it out. He said I know, but we don't quit. That's not who we are anymore. Entry 9, May 28th. Frank stopped by, looked at the field, said I'm sorry, Rob. This is the worst hail damage I've seen in a decade. I said what do I do? He said you survive, you take the loss, you move on. I said I can't take the loss. I don't have enough money to take the loss. He said then you find money, sell something, borrow something, find a way. He said I've been farming 40 years. I've had 3 total crop failures, hail twice, drought once. Every time I thought I was done, every time I found a way to keep going. He said that's farming. You don't choose when disasters come. You only choose if you survive them. I said how. He said however you have to. Entry 10, June 1st. I sold the cattle, all 11 cows, all 11 calves, didn't want to, had to, got 18,000, used it to pay down debt, pay the land contract, buy time. The pasture is empty now. The barn is quiet, but I've got 6 months before I run out of money. 6 months to figure out how to make it to next year. Danny said we should plant the wheat field in hay, emergency hay. It won't make money this year, but it'll give us something to sell next year. I said that costs money we don't have. He said I've got 3,000 saved. Use it. I said I can't take your savings. He said I'm not giving it. I'm investing it. Same as before. We're partners. Partners invest when things get hard. We planted 40 acres in alfalfa, the best ground. The ground that didn't get completely destroyed by hail, cost $2,200 for seed, used Danny's money. The guilt sits heavy, but the seed is in the ground, and in ground there's hope. Entry 11, June 15th. Hay cutting started, 80 acres on both farms that were already planted. The wheat field sits empty except for the emergency alfalfa that won't be ready until next year. But the hay fields are thick. The best crop yet. We're going to get 800 bales, maybe more. At $7 each, that's 5,600. Not enough to replace wheat income, but enough to survive until next harvest. The Farmall is running strong. Danny did a complete rebuild over winter. New pistons, new rings, new bearings. She runs like she's 50 years old instead of 73. Smooth, quiet, powerful. He said she's good for another 20 years. I said we'll both be dead before this tractor quits. He said then we're building something that outlasts us. I said that's the only thing worth building. Entry 12, June 28th. Hay sales started. First 400 bales sold to a rancher in Jordan. $2,800. It's not wheat money, not even close, but it's something. It's proof we can still produce, still earn, still survive. Linda called today. Said she heard about the hail, said she's sorry. I said these things happen. She said, do you need help? I said I'll be okay. She said, Rob, do you need help? I told her the truth, said I might. She said, I've got 5,000 saved. It's yours if you need it. I said, I can't take your money. She said, it's not for you. It's for Danny. And for what you're building, I said, I'll pay you back. She said, I know you will. Entry 13, July 15th. Linda's money came through. $5,000. Combined with hay sales and the cattle money, I've got enough to make it through winter. Enough to plant next year. Enough to survive. I wrote her a thank you note. Tried to express what it means. Came up short. Some gratitude is too big for words. Jessica called from Seattle, 30 years old now. Said she's been thinking about Montana, about moving back. I said why. She said because I miss having family close, because Seattle is expensive and lonely, because I want to be part of what you and Danny are building. I said there's nothing to be part of right now. We just lost everything to hail. She said you didn't lose everything. You lost one crop. There's a difference. I said it doesn't feel different. She said give it time. It will. Entry 14, August 1st. Jessica moved to Montana. Got a job at the hospital in Glasgow. Bought a small house in town. She's 30 miles away now, close enough to visit, far enough to have her own life. She came out to the farm last weekend. Wanted to see the operation. I gave her the full tour. The destroyed wheat field already recovering with emergency hay. The hay fields were cutting. The equipment. The Farmall she remembered me talking about. She stood in the machine shed looking at that old tractor. Said this is the one that started it all. I said that's her. She said can I sit on it? I said of course. She climbed up, sat in the seat where I've sat 1,000 times, where Walt sat, where every farmer who owned this machine sat. She said it feels solid. I said it is. She said I get it now, why you did this, why Danny stayed. There's something real here. I said yeah, there is. Even when it fails, it's real. Entry 15, September 1st. Fall planning. Danny and I sat down with spreadsheets and calculators and hard lessons learned. We know what disaster looks like now. Know how fast things can go wrong. We're planning for that, building reserves, diversifying, not betting everything on one crop. The plan for next year: 160 acres wheat, 60 acres hay, buy back 15 cow-calf pairs. We'll need to finance the cattle again, take on debt we just paid off. But we can't rely on crops alone. Montana won't let you. The weather won't let you. You have to spread risk or risk loses everything. Entry 16, September 20th. The emergency hay is growing. The alfalfa we planted after hail is 6 inches tall, thin but alive. It won't produce this year, but next year it'll give us 2 cuttings, maybe 3. That field that was destroyed is becoming something new. Not what we planned, but something. That's the lesson. When disaster comes, you don't restore what was. You build what's next. Entry 17, October 10th. Winter wheat planting. 160 acres. We're being conservative, not expanding like we planned, just replacing what hail destroyed. The seed costs $2,800 on credit, same gamble, same hope, but different feeling. Last year we planted with confidence. This year we plant with fear. Fear that it'll happen again. Fear that we'll lose everything again. Fear that next time there won't be money to recover. Danny said we can't farm scared. I said I'm not scared, I'm realistic. He said there's a difference between realistic and defeated. I said which one am I? He said you're planting wheat. That's not defeated. That's stubborn hope. I said stubborn hope. That's farming in 2 words. Entry 18, October 25th. The wheat is up, green across 160 acres. Smaller than last year, more cautious, but alive. Growing, refusing to quit like us. Like everyone who gets knocked down and stands back up. The stand looks good. Even, no thin spots, just solid wheat ready to grow. Danny said, Dad, we've come a long way. I said we have. He said, you ever think about the divorce? About how it led here? I said sometimes. He said, you regret it. I said, which part? He said, any of it. I thought about that. Said, I regret the marriage failing. Regret the years we weren't happy. But I don't regret where it led. Don't regret this farm, this life. Working beside you, even the hail, even the loss. It's all part of the story. He said, me neither. Entry 19, November 15th. Bought 15 cows. Bred, due to calve in March. Financed them through livestock credit, 5-year note, 400-month payment. We're back in the cattle business. The pasture has animals again. The cycle continues, fall, winter, spring, loss, recovery, growth. That's farming, that's life. You don't control it, you endure it, you adapt. Entry 20, December 1st. Jessica came for dinner. First family dinner in the new house. Danny cooked. Steaks from a steer we bought from a neighbor. Potatoes we grew in the garden. Bread Jessica brought from town. The 3 of us sitting at a table. Brother and sister and father. Not the family we started with. The family we became. Jessica said, this is nice. I said, what is? She said this, all of us together. Danny in Montana, you farming, me close enough to visit. It's different than I expected. I said, different how? She said, different good. She said, when you and Mom divorced, I thought the family was over, but it wasn't over. It just changed, got smaller, got simpler, got honest. Danny said that's what farming does, strips everything to essentials. Shows you what matters. She said, does it matter? The farm, all this work. I said, it matters to me. She said, that's enough then. Entry 21, December 25th. Christmas, 3rd one on the farm. Linda came, first time she's visited. She drove from Billings with her boyfriend. They stayed in town, came out for Christmas dinner. It was strange having her here, in the house I own, on the land I farm, in the life I built after she left me. But it was good too. She was genuinely happy for me, for Danny, for what we've accomplished. She said, Rob, I'm proud of you. I said, for what? She said, for not giving up, for making this work, for being the father Danny needed. I said, I'm trying. She said, you're doing more than trying, you're succeeding. Her boyfriend asked what the farm is worth now. I said, I don't know. He said, you must have some idea. I said, the land is probably worth $200,000, the equipment maybe $60,000, the cattle $20,000. Minus debt I've got maybe $150,000 equity. He said, that's good for 3 years. I said, it's everything for 3 years, every dollar I earned, every decision I made, every disaster I survived. He said, was it worth it? I said, every day. Entry 22, January 10th, 2026. New year, I'll be 54 this year. Danny will be 30. Jessica is 31. We're all getting older. Time moving faster the older you get, but I don't mind. Getting older means surviving, means making it through another year, another hailstorm, another loss, another recovery, means the farm is still here, still running, still producing. The wheat is dormant under snow, sleeping, waiting for spring, exactly like last year, the cycle repeating, predictable in rhythm, unpredictable in outcome. That's farming. The seasons don't change. You do. You get stronger, smarter, more prepared, but you also get more afraid because you know what can go wrong because you've lived it. Entry 23, February 1st. Danny is engaged. He met a woman, Sarah. She works at the feed store in Circle. They've been dating 6 months. I didn't even know until he told me. He said we're getting married in June. I said congratulations. He said I want to do it here on the farm. I said of course. He said Sarah wants to move into Walt's house. Make it ours. I said it is yours. He said I mean really ours. Fix it up. Make it a home. Start a family. I said that sounds right. He said, Dad, I need to tell you something. I said, what? He said, I'm happy, really happy. For the first time in my life, everything makes sense. The work, the land, Sarah, all of it fits. I said, I'm glad. He said, it's because of you, because you were crazy enough to buy this place, stubborn enough to make it work. Even when hail destroyed everything, even when we almost lost it, you didn't quit. I said, we didn't quit. He said, yeah, we didn't. Entry 24, March 1st. Calving season, year 2, 15 cows this time. The first calf came 3 days ago. Easy birth, bull calf, healthy. The births are coming steady now, 1 or 2 a day. Danny and I are checking every 4 hours. Sarah helps when she can. Jessica came out last weekend to see a birth. Watched a cow deliver a heifer calf. She said that's incredible. I said that's life. She said no, that's a miracle. I said miracles happen every day if you're paying attention. We've had 13 calves so far, 2 more cows to go, all healthy, all nursing. Success rate 100%. That's skill. That's knowledge. That's 3 years of learning what to watch for, when to intervene, when to let nature work. Entry 25, March 18th. 3 years exactly since the divorce. 3 years since $44,000. 3 years since I didn't know what to do with my life. I'm sitting here now with 340 acres, 15 cattle, equipment that runs, a son who's my partner, a daughter who lives close, a future that survived hail and loss and came back stronger. The Farmall sits in the shed, 74 years old, still running, still working, still refusing to quit. Danny wants to retire her, put her in the barn, keep her as a monument. I said she's not done yet. He said, Dad, she's earned her rest. I said, so have I, but we're both still working. He said, what if she breaks? I said, then we fix her. That's what we do. We fix things. We don't throw them away because they're old or because they failed once. Entry 26, April 1st. Spring work started, fertilizing the wheat. The crop looks perfect, thick, even, green across 160 acres. No signs of winter kill, no thin spots, just solid wheat ready to grow. We're hoping for 40 bushel yield this year. Good weather, good management, everything we've learned applied. And luck, always luck. Luck that hail doesn't come back. Entry 27, April 20th. The wheat is growing strong. Good rain this spring, steady moisture. The crop is heading out now. The head's forming. This looks like last year before the hail. Perfect, beautiful, vulnerable. I watch the forecast obsessively. Check radar every few hours, looking for storms, looking for threats, living in fear of losing everything again. Danny said you can't farm like this, waiting for disaster. I said, how else do you farm? He said, with hope instead of fear. I said, I tried hope. Hail destroyed it. He said, then try again. Hope isn't one crop. Hope is every crop, every season, every year you plant again. That's hope. Getting knocked down and standing back up. Entry 28, May 5th. The forecast is clear. No storms, no hail warnings, just steady spring weather, perfect growing conditions. The wheat is thriving, 30 inches tall, heads full and heavy. Frank stopped by, said you're looking at 45 bushels, maybe more, looks better than last year before the hail. I said, don't jinx it. He said, I'm not jinxing it, I'm stating facts. You did everything right. Now you wait and see if weather cooperates. I said, that's the part that terrifies me. He said, that's the part that makes you a farmer. Entry 29, May 15th. Spring passed without disaster. No hail, no storms, just gentle rain and warm sun and wheat growing exactly like it should. The crop is maturing now, turning from green to gold. The heads are full, the seeds are forming, hard, plump, perfect. We're 3 weeks from harvest, 3 weeks from knowing if we recovered, if we survived, if this farm is sustainable or just a gamble we got lucky on once. Entry 30, June 1st. Danny and Sarah got married yesterday. Small ceremony, 20 people, right here on the farm under the cottonwoods by the creek. Jessica stood with Sarah, I stood with Danny. A preacher from Circle did the service. 5 minutes, simple, honest, perfect. At the reception, Danny stood up, said he wanted to say something. He said 3 years ago my dad made a crazy decision, bought a broken farm, fixed a dead tractor, learned to farm from scratch. I thought he'd lost his mind, but he hadn't lost anything. He'd found everything. He'd found purpose, found a life worth living, found a way to bring us back together. He said, Dad, this farm saved you, but it saved me too. Gave me something to believe in, something to work for, someone to work beside. He said, I love you. Thank you for being crazy. Thank you for not quitting. Thank you for showing me what it means to build something that matters. Even when hail destroys it, even when you lose everything, you build it again. I didn't know what to say, just stood there trying not to cry in front of 20 people. Finally, I said, You're welcome, son. He said, We're going to keep building, keep this place going, pass it to our kids someday. I said I'd like that. He said, Then let's make it happen. Entry 31, July 10th, 2026. Harvest finished. Our own combine this time. No rental, no custom operator, just Danny and me. 2 weeks of cutting. 160 acres at 44 bushels average, 7,040 bushels. Times 690 price equals 48,576 gross. 28,000 net after expenses. We recovered, we made it back. The hail didn't kill us, we survived. Entry 32, August 1st. I did something today I never thought I'd do. I took the Farmall to a restoration shop in Billings, told them to do a complete professional restoration. Engine rebuild, new paint, original decals, reupholster the seat, make her look like 1952 again. Cost me $6,000. Danny said, Why? I said, Because she earned it. He said, She's just a tractor. I said, She's not just a tractor. She's the reason we're here. The reason I learned to farm. The reason I didn't quit after hail destroyed everything. She deserves to be honored. He said, You're sentimental about a machine. I said, I'm grateful to a machine. There's a difference. The restoration will take 3 months. We'll pick her up in November. She'll sit in the barn then, retired, honored, a reminder of where we started, what we survived, who we became. Entry 33, September 15th. Jessica is dating someone, a doctor at the hospital. She brought him to the farm last weekend. His name is Michael, he's 40, divorced. No kids, he seemed nice, quiet, respectful. He asked good questions about the farm, about the work, about what it takes to survive hail and loss and still keep going. At dinner, he said Jessica talks about this place a lot, about how it changed her family. I said it showed us who we really are, what we're capable of, what matters. He said that's rare. Most people never figure that out. I said most people never get desperate enough, never lose everything and have to rebuild. That's when you learn. Entry 34, October 30th. Fall planting done. 180 acres this year. We're expanding cautiously, renting another 20 from a neighbor who's retiring. The wheat is up, green across 180 acres, our biggest crop yet. If we average 40 bushels, that's 7,200 bushels, 50,000 gross, 30,000 net. We're growing, scaling, becoming something sustainable. But I'm not celebrating yet. Not after last year, not after hail. I'll celebrate when the crop is in the bin, when the check is cashed, when we survive another year. That's farming. You don't celebrate potential, You celebrate survival. Entry 35, November 20th. Picked up the Farmall today. Danny and I drove to Billings, loaded her on a trailer, brought her home. When they rolled her out of the shop, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked new. The red paint deep and glossy, the chrome shining, the decals crisp, the seat like leather instead of torn vinyl. 74 years old and she looked 20. We unloaded her at the farm, rolled her into the barn, positioned her in the center, put a rope across the doors, a sign, "Do not operate, museum piece." Danny said she looks good. I said she looks how she deserves to look. He said you going to miss driving her. I said every day, but she's earned her rest. I sat in the seat one last time, hands on the steering wheel, feet on the pedals, remembering the first time I started her, the terror, the hope, the desperation, remembering Walt teaching me to drive her, Danny learning beside me, all the hours, all the acres, all the work she did without complaint, through drought, through perfect years, through my learning, through my failures. I said thank you, out loud. Thank you for running when I needed you to. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for not quitting. The barn was quiet, just me and an old tractor, but it felt like Walt was there. Like he was saying you did good. You survived. That's all any of us can do. Entry 36, December 25th, 2026. Christmas, year 3, the whole family here. Linda and her boyfriend, Jessica and Michael, Danny and Sarah, 7 of us around the table, not the family we were, the family we became. Broken pieces that found new shapes, new purposes, new joy. Linda said, "Rob, I need to tell you something." I said, "What?" She said, "I'm proud of you, really proud. 3 years ago I didn't think you'd make it. I thought the farm was a mistake. I was wrong. You've built something incredible. You survived hail, survived loss, survived everything." I said, "Thank you." She said, "I mean it. You took nothing and made it everything. That takes courage." She said, "I'm sorry I didn't see it then." I said, "You see it now. That's enough." Entry 37, March 18th, 2027. 4 years since the divorce. I'm 54 years old. I own 340 acres, run 180 acres of wheat, keep 15 breeding cows, employ my son as partner, have my daughter living 30 miles away, have a bank account with money in it, have survived disaster and rebuilt, have a future that looks certain as anything can be in farming. The Farmall sits in the barn, restored, retired, honored. She's done her work. Now she's a monument, a reminder, a teacher for whoever comes next. Danny's kids will see her, will ask about her, will hear the story of how an old tractor and a desperate man saved each other, how they survived, how they refused to quit even when hail destroyed everything. Entry 38, final entry, June 30th, 2027. This journal ends here, not because the story is over, because this chapter is complete. 4 years from divorce to here, from $44,000 to a farm that works, from broken to whole, from lost to found, from destroyed by hail to rebuilt stronger. The wheat is ready to harvest, 180 acres turning gold. Danny will run the combine, I'll run the grain cart. Sarah will help with trucks. We're a family operation now, a real business, a legacy being built from rust and rain and stubborn refusal to quit. People ask me if I'd do it again, if I'd make the same choices, buy the same farm, fix the same tractor, learn the same lessons, survive the same hail. I say yes, every time, even knowing how hard it would be, even knowing the loss, even knowing the fear, because hard is what makes it worth doing. Hard is what proves you're alive. Loss is what teaches you to value what you build. Fear is what shows you're still fighting. My name is Robert Keller. 4 years ago I was nobody. Today I'm a farmer, a landowner, a father working beside his son, a man who took rust and made it run, who took broken ground and made it grow, who took an ending and turned it into a beginning, who survived hail and disaster and rebuilt everything from nothing. The Farmall taught me something. Old doesn't mean useless. Broken doesn't mean finished. Destroyed doesn't mean defeated. Given time and work and stubborn refusal to quit, anything can be restored. Any life can be rebuilt. Any disaster can be survived. Any man can become who he needs to be. The work continues. The seasons turn. The wheat grows. The cattle graze. And I'm here, still standing, still farming, still grateful for the day I walked into a machine shed and saw a dead tractor that refused to stay dead. Just like me. Just like everyone who bets on impossible things and somehow makes them real. This is my life now. This is my legacy, built from divorce, built from desperation, built from an old tractor and stubborn hope, built from survival. This is enough. This is everything.